Foods 12-hour meat sale this Thursday only with great savings on Prairie Fresh boneless pork loin roast, $1.98 a pound. USDA Choice boneless beef sirloin tip roast, $3.98 a pound. Prairie Fresh pork loin fillet, $4.98 each.
Super One Foods 12-hour meat sale this Thursday only. The savings are sizzling.
Creme Care's Treats to Troops.
But getting that package and knowing that there's people in the community that have donated their time, their money, their efforts, just so you can have a little piece of home, it means everything. Anytime something shows up unexpected and it's from your loved ones, it always, makes you feel like you're a little closer to home. So thank you so much, Treats for Troops. Thanks for everything that you do to support us. We feel the love downrange.
Creme Care's Salute to Service is in partnership with the Kalispel Tribe of Indians and Northern Quest Resort and Casino.
Across our state, we have roads and bridges in desperate need of repair. But Initiative 2117 would make things even worse, slashing funding for infrastructure, putting all of us at risk. 2117 is a bad deal for Washington.
At Creme 2, there's more to every story.
Welcome back to the CBS News coverage of the vice presidential debate. Michigan and its 15 electoral votes are part of the blue wall, the states that Democrats like to think are firmly in their camp. But in 2016, they thought that too, and Donald Trump became the first Republican to win there in nearly 30 years. CBS News national correspondent Jerika Duncan is in Grand Rapids, Michigan, speaking to voters. Good evening, Jerika.
Good evening to you. Good evening to everyone. Kent County is where we're at here in Grand Rapids, Michigan. It's a very important county when you look at the numbers. And by that, I mean that this county has picked the winner of the presidential election 3 times out of the 4 last presidential elections. So joining me is this lovely group. They all say they watch CBS, so we love that. But show of hands, briefly, how many of you guys are leaning or planning to vote for Harrison Walz? So we have 2. How many are planning to vote for Trump and J.D. Vance? And then there's 2 left that are undecided. So a CBS News poll shows us that people are watching this debate because they want to hear more about these candidates. What specifically are you looking for, Bill? And I'm going to start with you because you voted for Trump in 2016. You didn't vote at all in 2020. And here you are today trying to figure out who exactly you're going to vote for. So what are you looking for?
I'm looking for a good economy.
A good economy.
Yeah. Safety.
Safety.
Yeah.
And Eric, what about you?
Economy is extremely important. Safety as well. I have 2 daughters. I'm a business owner, so both of those things are very important to me as well.
Holly?
I would say the economy is the main priority for me right now.
And Christina, I see you have your notepad, so you are prepared. You are ready to take notes.
I agree. The economy and the, what was the other thing we were talking about? There were 2 things, the economy.
Safety.
And safety. Oh, yeah, crime. Mm-hmm.
I know that you're also a voter that was leaning more toward Nikki Haley at one point. That's correct?
No.
Oh, you weren't okay, that was Holly?
That was me.
I'm so sorry. There's so many notes that go out. Well, Ellie, let's go back to you then, because I think it's interesting when you have to make this decision, you're looking at this debate while so many people already know who they're going to vote for. You were looking at Nikki Haley as someone that you were really considering, but you're a bit torn. Mm-hmm. So is there something that these candidates could say or do that would clarify where they stand on any position or have you feel more confident in who you're going to vote for when you leave today?
Yeah, I think the 3 most important things to me in this election are definitely inflation, abortion rights, and then also gun control. I have 2 little kids, and they're going to school. So that's starting to be a little scary now.
And Max, what about you? You have 3 children. You're planning to vote for Trump and Vance. Talk to us about why and what are you hoping to get out of this debate tonight?
I'm really interested to see both Vance and Walz's viewpoints. My biggest concerns and focus points for this election is the economy, immigration, and a strong foreign policy, kind of shore up some of, our involvements overseas and bring it back home and get, us squared away here.
And that's what we've heard time and time again, even in our polling, the economy, safety, immigration. These are issues that a lot of Americans care about. Our job is always to make sure we reveal America to itself. So we thank you guys for joining us tonight to help let people see, regardless of how they feel, this is kind of a taste of what voters are thinking and feeling in this state of Michigan, which we know will be very important in this election. So we'll send it back to you guys, and we'll check in with you a little bit later.
Yeah, you're not going anywhere. We're going to be checking in with you all evening, Jerika. Thank you. Ed Gordon, I want to bring you back in. You've got an important perspective in this because you live outside of Detroit, and we know the suburbs of Detroit, this election in particular, are expected to play a very important role. Given the breaking news that we are watching unfold in the Middle East right now, Vice President Kamala Harris is facing significant questions about her policy in Israel and how and whether she will differ very much from President Biden. What are you hearing when you were talking to your neighbors and voters in this area on this front?
It's interesting. I'm a Midwesterner, born and raised in Detroit, and today's escalation in the Middle East can prove crucial to this state. There is a large Arab population outside of Detroit in Dearborn. They have not been happy with many administrations, not just the Biden administration, but administrations previous. They don't see a balanced view from the White House as relates to Israel and their positions. And so what we're seeing today is going to be unique in terms of whether or not this group can, in fact, be energized, whether they will, in fact, throw their weight behind Kamala Harris. That was the thought early on, but there has not been a clear path to her because of that.
Yeah, I think the question is whether they show up, right, on Election Day.
I was recently in Dearborn, talked to several voters on this very question. This was before what the administration would argue is a clarifying moment, Iran attacking Israel. That takes away some of the obscurity of, is it a militia or what is happening in the region around? It's now Iran, Israel. Harris hopes that that clarifies things that Israel must defend itself and must be supported. There will be a competition on the debate stage tonight about unequivocal support and the strength of that message delivered by both Walz and Vance. They will be testing each other on that very score.
And very quickly, if you remember in the primaries, that group decided to withhold their votes. They wanted to send a message. We'll see if that was heard.
And have the circumstances changed? Thank you both very much. When we come back, childcare is expensive, housing is expensive. Those are just two of the issue areas we'll look at as we examine where the two candidates stand on everyday costs.
Hims and Hers helps people live better lives through better health care. That's why we're offering teachers, first responders, nurses, military and veterans, GLP-1 weight loss treatment plans for up to 50% off. Find personalized prescription plans that serve your goals 100% online. Through Hims and Hers, you also get access to tracking tools and unlimited chat support from licensed medical providers. Our communities rely on you. Now you can rely on us for quality care. Get the service appreciation discount for up to 50% off at Hims and Hers.
Pro-level performance at work and at home. Right now, save $50 on the BGA 57 battery blower. Real steel. Find yours.
At Simply Safe, your safety is the only thing that matters. We designed smarter ways to detect motion for fast emergency response. We create HD cameras so you could see what's happening in your home from anywhere. All powered by Fast Protect technology. Exclusively from Simply Safe for faster police response. Now install our advanced system your way. Have a pro set it up or easily do it yourself. There's no safe like Simply Safe.
NCIS returns October 14th, part of CBS Premiere Week on CBS.
Krem2's weather impact pinpoints days you need to be on alert.
If weather's going to impact your day, we'll tell you about it first.
At Krem2 News, we're out in front of severe weather, warning you days in advance with weather impact alerts. You'll know exactly when, where, and how weather will impact you and how to stay safe. Krem2's weather impact is not hype. It's a heads up with a clear and easy to understand forecast every time. That's Krem2's weather impact.
Sometimes life is a funny way of turning sideways, like when your kid decides they're a professional stylist the morning of picture day, or when your to-do list isn't quite done. You went to Rite Aid, right? Or when you're sure you packed everything you need, but you actually need one more thing.
We forgot our prescriptions.
We
got you. Are we happy?
We are happy. Find everything you need? Yep. Yeah, life never really goes the way you plan, but that's why we're here. It means more at Rite Aid.
When you need inspiration, it's worth shopping Fred Meyer. For thousands of appetizing ingredients that inspire countless mouth-watering meals. And low prices that add up to big savings, like over $600 in digital coupons each week, and up to $1 off per gallon at the pump. So you can get big flavors and big savings. Fred Meyer, fresh for everyone.
Deer Unleashed. No one knows the feeling of freedom quite the way you do. But damned if we don't come really, really close. Let's break the chain. Yours, Tundra.
Hey y'all, we're live. Like live. Like the VP debate is live. We got Marcus Pittman, CEO of Lore. You guys know him. He's a regular
Here
around
in studio
here.
once again.
Chuck Knox.
You
We
got a Twitter handle back.
I got it.
Yo,
I got it. I'm back.
No, hold
We
on.
freed King Ginger.
Hold on. I thought he's not in his seat right now, so I can't go to him. I just saw Rod Martin. Yes, I did. There, he's sitting in the seat now. Rod, bring up Rod Martin real quick. Bring up Rod Martin because I got to ask him a question. Bring him into the room. Rod, I do before you don't say hi anything, and you just tell me yes or no. Have you been taking Ozempic?
No.
Rod, I'm gonna ask you again because I think you might have been lying to me. What
Now, how could I possibly lie on CrossPolitic? That would be terrible.
I looked at you. I was like, "Where's Rod Martin at? What happened to Rod Martin?"
I have lost a little weight. Yes.
A little, yes. You lost half of you. You look great, man.
Yeah. It would be nice if it were that much, but still working on it.
Well, I'm just glad you didn't snub us. You know, normally when it's time for the debates, you snub us.
Last time he was sick. He was poor raw. That's probably how he lost all his weight.
That's when he lost all his weight. It's good to have you here, brother.
Good to be here.
Yeah.
We also have William Wolf will be coming on here in a little bit, and our boy Dead Man Walking, Greg Moore. You can't do a live stream over a debate without Greg around. So that's who's going to be joining us throughout the show tonight. And then I've been in our Discord chat group with our club members, and we're probably going to bring some club members into the show also throughout the, give them a chance to kind of hop into the debate. So if you're a club member, get on your Discord chat and you can come in and chat with us.
Oh, so we have a Discord?
Yeah. You don't pay attention to our emails.
I don't like Discord.
You don't follow our emails.
I don't like it. It's one of the
I didn't know
hardest
y'all had a Discord either.
Well, it's one of the hardest things to like wrap my head around, and I'm just like, I just want
It's a chat room, David.
I get it.
I know,
I'm old.
I know.
I'm
He's
old.
using Chat GTP and all this AI stuff. I don't get Discord.
He skipped it. He skipped it.
But it reminds me of what's the other one that everybody likes to use? The
Slack.
No, not Slack. Slack I can understand.
It's Discord and Slack are the exact same thing.
It's messy. It's like somebody from an Android made it. I need somebody who's like from an Apple to make it so it's user friendly. That's what I need. So
I would have the complete flip view of the UX for that.
It took you a long time to finally get an Apple phone too.
It's true. It's true.
So, since Gabe is on his phone texting all the people in the chat, I don't know what you're doing.
Just texting our club members in our Discord.
Since we don't normally get a chance to have Rod Martin on here, I want to ask Rod.
Yeah.
I want to know from you tonight what to expect from these two VP candidates, and do you think it matters at all? I'm just kind of here to eat some pizza, have some popcorn, and drink some bourbon, because I just think this is probably going to be extremely more fiery than the last debate between Kamala and Trump.
Well, because that's what you do. You sit around and drink bourbon. I mean, duh. But you're exactly right in both directions. This will be much more interesting than the prior debate. It will be much fierier. It will also not matter that much. Vice presidential debates almost never matter that much. But it's more than that this year. People's minds are shockingly made up, even across a lot of the independents. And so, we saw coming out of the last debate, a lot of conservative commentators really worried that Trump had flubbed the dub. He's blown it now. No, not at all. Actually, if anything, the biggest thing to come out of that debate was the "Don't Eat My Cats" video. And honestly, those memes probably did more for Donald Trump than they possibly could have hurt him. So debates don't mean what they used to mean. However, J.D. Vance will probably do an incredible job. Tim Walz is a terrible, terrible person, and he's going to lie. Certainly Kamala lied about the fact that he has, through executive action, legally permitted after-birth abortions. That's babies who are born alive that they allow to die. And it's just horrifying. They call him Tampon Tim because he put tampons in the boys' bathrooms. That's the least of his problems. They passed a long-arm statute under Tim Walz to be able to reach into your state and capture your children to drag them back to his state to mutilate them. It's horrifying. This is the modern Democratic Party. So whatever problems the GOP may have, I mean, it pales into insignificance. This is actually a bunch of communists. And again, Tim Walz tonight, he's told us that he believes there is no First Amendment protection whatsoever for anything that the government decides is misinformation. Well, that means there's no protection for you guys. You're toast.
Mm-hmm.
Well, so I think I've been thinking about this because while I think debates usually just kind of reconfirm who you're supporting in a lot of ways. Now, some debates do change a lot. I mean, Trump, when he was going up against 10 Republicans in the primaries in 2016, his debates changed a lot for a lot of people. He put Jeb Bush in his seat in that debate. Now, I think the Kamala and Trump debate, I don't think it really did much. I do think, in a weird way, that this VP debate could actually change things for a couple reasons. One is because there's only one Trump-Kamala debate, so there wasn't enough debates to maybe move people. I
don't think there needs to be another one either.
Secondly,
if I was Trump, I wouldn't give her one.
No. Secondly, this debate has J.D. Vance, who's a pretty well-liked, figure in kind of blue-collar states, versus Walz, he's just not liked. I mean, he might be liked in Minnesota enough to become governor, but he has no national credibility or brand. Zero.
Well, it's because he's with the Chinese, but
we actually investigated.
That came out today, right?
It's being investigated.
It came out yesterday that
sure.
Tim Walz is being investigated for Chinese communist ties.
Yes.
And maybe sooner than that.
It's ridiculous.
You said a
sleeper cell.
Oh wow.
What do you mean by like sleeper cell?
I mean, look, nobody has spent as much time in communist China as Tim Walz. He's over there around the time of Tiananmen Square. He's not smuggling Bibles into China. He's advancing the CCP, and he has been ever since. He's terrible. I mean, these guys have been practicing Maoism for the last 10 years. We're experiencing what amounts to a cultural revolution in the United States, which is not as effective as it might have been in the 60s in China because they haven't consolidated power at the federal level. But that's really what this election is about. Will they consolidate power? And if they do, Donald Trump is absolutely right. They are communists, and this must be stopped.
Now,
go ahead.
Yeah, Rod, we actually talked about this on the show, I don't know, last week or something. I can't remember. We do too many shows a week, and I can't remember anymore. But it used to be like in the 80s and 90s, if you called Democrats socialist or communist, everyone's like, oh, you're exaggerating. And even though
usually you were.
But it's still like, that was, especially the socialism charge was legit in the 80s and 90s still with Democrats, I believe. I believe that was a legit
charge. And they
charge.
started calling themselves socialists very openly. So, that ship sailed. That's 10 years now.
So speaking of sleeper cells, can we talk about Ortland for a second? You mind if we do that?
How's it tied into the debate?
Well,
it starts in 6 minutes.
Well, because I haven't heard Rod Martin talk in a long time, and I want to get all my Rod Martin in as I can get. And so Ray Ortland came out with a tweet that said, "Never Trump, this time Kamala, always Jesus." And somehow got misrepresented and misunderstood by a lot of people that he had to delete the whole tweet
after defending it in the comments.
Yeah, he defended it and all.
And then deleted it.
So I don't understand. That scares me for him and his safety for thinking. But Rod, what is your? How could somebody? Because it still doesn't remove the fact that he's still going to vote for someone, like you said, it's not nowhere to spend more time in communist China than Walz. How could he then validate voting for that party right now and still say always Jesus?
Well, because he, like a lot of other senior big Eva leaders, is really a fifth column. These guys have been Democrat operatives now for over a decade, and they kicked into high gear after the Hillary defeat in 2016. They couldn't imagine that screaming sex with the Billy Bush tape wouldn't spook all the evangelicals away from Trump, and Hillary wins by 12 points. And in fact, it turns out that evangelicals aren't completely stupid and realized that if you replace Antonin Scalia with Merrick Garland, that's the end of the First Amendment. So they voted for Trump. They didn't know that Trump would do right. They just knew she would do wrong. So they have been in overdrive ever since. Ortland is one of those guys. You will note he's one of Russell Moore's bosses. You will note that one of Russell Moore's other bosses, the chairman of the board at Christianity Today, is on Evangelicals for Harris. You'll notice all these people that we have been talking about now for the last decade. And of course, Knox, you documented so clearly in the By the Standard documentary that I got to be a small part of. That was spot on. And it's bigger than that. And we're seeing it come to fruition. These guys are outing themselves right and left. You see it with David French, of course, big shocker there. But they're pulling the mask off. They're just saying who they are. You know, and they've got a thin veneer of Jesus over their actual socialism.
You know, Ray's a Ganglican.
Yes.
You follow that? He went Anglican.
Okay.
Gay Anglican. Ganglican.
Okay.
That's such a good word. I've been, since Rod started talking, I've been thinking about that thing the whole time.
Greg, did you get that? Was that funny to you, Greg? Greg from Dead Man Walking has arrived. Everybody. Let's get his
What's up, fellas?
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, I got the sound drop. No, that sounds more like an Anglican that comes from Compton. A Ganglican. I don't know.
Okay.
So what did you just?
I don't know. I was talking to staff.
Yeah, you just yelled. You know, we're supposed to be doing a professional show here,
and
you're going to talk to the staff.
Everyone knows the live stream is cray.
I will, guys. If you came for a professional show, you might as well go stream somewhere else. This is going to be a.
So
Toby's not here.
2 minutes before the debate starts.
So, Greg, what are your expectations for tonight?
Quick,
go.
Oh, geez. Hopefully, we can watch Walz lie and J.D. Vance call him out on it. Because he's got a lot of questions to answer, especially when it comes to social issues
and Chinese issues. Let's real quick before we get started. We are.
This is already awkward.
Yeah.
This is already awkward.
I know.
J.D. Vance just went somewhere and left Walz up there. Walz is not moving. Look, Walz looks like, did I miss the opportunity?
That's
this is
hilarious.
amazing.
Let's bring Dr. Brown in real quick. Dr. Brown's a club member, so our club members are going to be coming in and out of the show throughout the show. Dr. Brown, why don't you come in? Where are you from?
What kind of doctor?
And then we're going to drop you out real quick because we got to get opening remarks. So what state are you from?
The great state of Ohio.
There you go.
They're eating
my baby girl.
They're eating the dogs and they're eating. Is that happening out there?
That's not. That's Ohio. Iowa.
Once great state of Ohio. How's that sound?
I thought he said Iowa. I'm sorry.
Mm-hmm. I know what I'm doing.
They're eating dogs and cats.
No more drinking for you.
They're eating cats and dogs.
Who's going to win tonight?
Oh, J.D. Vance, definitely. He's a pretty slick politician, so I don't see it going any other way.
I don't know about that slick term though.
He's a chameleon. He changes every 10 minutes or so.
I got to agree with the doc. There is some reality to that. I like Vance because I don't like my other options, but I will tell you I was very disappointed with him on the pro-life stuff.
I could have called that. I could have called that.
So the rules for the debate tonight, I'm bringing them up. Where'd they go? I had them, and then now they're gone.
You guys can roll it.
Is the debate live? No, there's still about a minute left. There's a minute left for the debate.
They hit pause on it, so you got it.
Oh yeah,
I don't know.
Keep
I don't
rolling,
really
guys.
care.
Don't stop.
I don't care
Don't
about
hit pause until we say hit pause.
I don't care.
Gabe's in a mood tonight.
Gabe is. I'm gonna take his alcohol. I don't care about the rules. I don't think it matters. They can tell us whatever the rules are going to be, and whatever they decide to do, they're going to do. And I don't think it matters what the rules are. I don't think it matters. I think Trump has proved it don't play to their rules anyway. So they
made rules for Trump.
For all we
Don't forget
know,
that.
all we know, Walz has some sort of earpiece in his ear to get questions and answers and stuff.
Hey guys, did you get that meme of Walz I sent you? See if you can bring it up.
Polling shows this remains a race either presidential candidate could win. The CBS News vice presidential debate starts now.
Fight for every single vote, and we're going to take this country back. And we are ready to continue to build the future together. We're going to turn this whole country red with President Donald J. Trump's leadership.
You know what's at the end of this little journey? Kamala Harris as the next president of the United
I hope
States.
not. I hope not.
This is a CBS News special, live from CBS News headquarters in New York. America Decides, the vice presidential debate.
Good evening. I'm Nora O'Donnell, and thank
Oh,
you
two
for
women
joining
this
us for
time.
tonight's CBS News Vice Presidential Debate. We want to welcome our viewers on CBS, on other networks here in the U.S. and around the world.
one of
We
them,
have a consequential time
minority?
ahead, and our focus is the issues that
Yeah.
matter to you, the voter. Let's introduce the candidates. Minnesota's
One
Democratic
part
Governor Tim Walz and Ohio's Republican Senator J.D. Vance tonight meeting for the first time.
Awkward.
I'm Margaret Brennan. In order to have a thoughtful and civil debate, these are the rules that both campaigns have agreed to. Questions will be directed at one candidate who will have 2
What's
minutes
up,
to
William?
respond. The other candidate will be allowed 2 minutes for rebuttal. Then each candidate will get another minute to make further points, with an additional 1 minute each at the discretion of the moderator. The primary role of the moderator
discretion.
is to facilitate the debate between the candidates, enforce the rules, and provide the candidates with the opportunity to fact-check claims made by each other. CBS News reserves the right to mute the candidates' microphones to maintain decorum. We have not shared the questions or topics with the campaigns.
I don't believe it. I don't believe it.
Thank you for joining us. Let's get started. Tonight, our country is facing several unfolding crises. The Middle East is on the brink of war. Americans are suffering from the catastrophic impact of Hurricane Helene. And now a labor strike as 25,000 dock workers from Maine to Texas are picketing. We're going to begin tonight with the Middle East. Margaret. Thank you, Nora. Earlier today, Iran launched its largest attack yet on Israel, but that attack failed, thanks to joint U.S. and Israeli defensive action. President Biden has deployed more than 40,000 U.S. military personnel and assets to that region over the past year to try to prevent a regional war. Iran is weakened, but the U.S. still considers it the largest state sponsor of terrorism in the world, and it has drastically reduced the time it would take to develop a nuclear weapon. It is down now to 1 or 2 weeks' time. Governor Walz, if you were the final voice in the Situation Room, would you support or oppose a preemptive strike by Israel on Iran? You have 2 minutes.
Well, thank you. And thank you for those joining at home tonight. Let's keep in mind where this started. October 7th, Hamas terrorists massacred over 1,400 Israelis and took prisoners. Israel's ability to be able to defend itself is absolutely fundamental. Getting its hostages back, fundamental, and ending the humanitarian crisis in Gaza. But the expansion of Israel and its proxies is an absolute fundamental necessity for the United States to have the steady leadership there. You saw it experienced today.
It's hard when you don't
along
have an
with our,
earpiece.
Israeli partners and our coalition able to stop the incoming
We don't know. He doesn't
attack.
have one yet.
But what's fundamental here is that steady leadership is going to matter. It's clear, and the world saw it on that debate stage a few weeks ago. A nearly 80-year-old Donald Trump talking about crowd sizes is not what we need in this moment. But it's not just that. It's those that were closest to Donald Trump that understand how dangerous he is when the world is this dangerous. His chief of staff, John Kelly, said that he was the most flawed human being he'd ever met. And both of his secretaries of defense and his national security advisors said he should be nowhere near the White House. Now, the person closest to them, Donald Trump, said he's unfit for the highest office. That was Senator Vance. What we've seen out of Vice President Harris is we've seen steady leadership. We've seen a calmness that is able to draw on the coalitions to bring them together, understanding that our allies matter. When our allies see Donald Trump turn towards Vladimir Putin, turn towards North Korea, when we start to see that type of fickleness around holding the coalitions together, we will stay committed. And as the vice president said today we will protect our forces and our allied forces, and there will be consequences.
North Korea.
Governor, your time is up. Senator Vance, the same question. Would you support or oppose a preemptive strike by Israel on Iran? You have 2 minutes.
So, Margaret, I want to answer the question. First of all, thanks, Governor. Thanks to CBS for hosting the debate. And thanks, most importantly, to the American people who are watching this evening and caring enough about this country to pay attention to this vice presidential debate. I want to answer the question, but I want to actually give an introduction to myself a little bit because I recognize a lot of Americans don't know who either one of us are. I was raised in a working class family. My mother required food assistance for periods of her life. My grandmother required Social Security help to raise me. And she raised me in part because my own mother struggled with addiction for a big chunk of my early life. I went to college on the GI Bill after I enlisted in the Marine Corps and served in Iraq. And so I stand here asking to be your vice president with extraordinary gratitude for this country, for the American dream that made it possible for me to live my dreams. And most importantly, I know that a lot of you are worried about the chaos in the world and the feeling that the American dream is unattainable. I want to try to convince you tonight over the next 90 minutes that if we get better leadership in the White House, if we get Donald Trump back in the White House, the American dream is going to be attainable once again. Now, to answer this particular question, we have to remember that as much as Governor Walz just accused Donald Trump of being an agent of chaos, Donald Trump actually delivered stability in the world, and he did it by establishing effective deterrence. People were afraid of stepping out of line. Iran, which launched this attack, has received over $100 billion in unfrozen assets thanks to the Kamala Harris administration. What do they use that money for? They use it to buy weapons that they're now launching against our allies, and God forbid, potentially launching against the United States as well. Donald Trump recognized that for people to fear the United States, you needed peace through strength. They needed to recognize that if they got out of line, the United States global leadership would put stability and peace back in the world. Now, you asked about a preemptive strike, Margaret, and I want to answer the question. Look, it is up to Israel what they think they need to do to keep their country safe, and we should support our allies wherever they are when they're fighting the bad guys. I think that's the right approach to take with the Israel question.
Thank you, Senator. Governor Walz, do you care to respond to any of the allegations?
Well, look, Donald Trump was in office. We'll sometimes hear a revisionist history, but when Donald Trump was in office, it was Donald Trump who we had a coalition of nations that had boxed Iran's nuclear program in, the inability to advance it. Donald Trump pulled that program and put nothing else in its place. So Iran is closer to a nuclear weapon than they were before because of Donald Trump's fickle leadership. And when Iran shot down an American aircraft in international airspace, Donald Trump tweeted, because that's the standard diplomacy of Donald Trump. And when Iranian missiles did fall near U.S. troops, and they received traumatic brain injuries, Donald Trump wrote it off as petty. Look, allies understand that Donald Trump is fickle. Will go to whoever has flattery or makes sense to him. Steady leadership like you witnessed today, like you witnessed in April. Both Iran.
Did we lose the feed there, guys?
I lost it.
Yeah, I'm not hearing anything.
It's the Iranians.
Who does the doc give the pinball machine parts to in Back to the Future? It's 11. The Libyans. That's who it is. Someone put in the comments, CBS done crashed. Yeah, I would figure they'd get it back in here as soon as they can, because it's going to be the same link. I was just hoping it wasn't me.
It appears not to have been. Congratulations.
I've been arguing with this local ISP to dig up my road and get fiber down it for the last 2 years, and we're real close. And I've been having nothing but internet issues since then. I don't know what's going on.
Well, we all need Starlink.
I think the stream is still live, though. Hey, guys, is the stream still live out there? There's people commenting, this is awkward. These guys talking is almost better than the debate. I don't know how that's possible, though, because they're I guess he said yes. Sam, we don't know what happened. Thank you for answering. He said, yep. Yes, the stream is still live. Oh, well, you guys just got to hear me tell my internet story. Cool. To a couple thousand people.
Well, we
guys,
can just do commentary here.
Let's do commentary.
So is it just us? We lost the CrossPolitic guys?
It's just us three. We lost the CrossPolitic guys, but
all right. Well, I'd like to announce officially that CrossPolitic has been taken over by Baptists, considering that Rod and I are both Baptists here, and I think that you
I'm outnumbered 2-1, you guys on the stream. Help.
No more baptizing babies. None.
Well, look, I'll say this for the people who are still listening. I think that was an incredible statement from J.D. Vance. I mean, right out of the gate, giving a little bit of his background, introducing himself. And, from Tim Walz, that was horrific. It was, it was just pure gaslighting. And that's clearly the route that he's going to go, is just lying about what we saw and experienced with our own eyes under 4 years of Trump's presidency, peace in the Middle East, the historic Abraham Accords, and now it's all falling apart. So it's just going to be lies and lies and lies from Tim Walz tonight.
Well, that's exactly right. And, right out the chute, he's Trump eliminated the Iran deal and put nothing in its place. Are you kidding? He put the most strenuous sanctions regime in history on Iran. He absolutely constrained them from having any ability to pay for their nuclear program, in addition to all the cool stuff that we did with Israel to mess up their computers with the Stuxnet virus and, all the different things that we've done to slow them down. Trump did that, and Trump went after their assets. And the minute Biden came in, they unfroze all of that, and they shipped $5 billion to the Iranians. You're seeing that money rain down on Israel tonight.
Yeah, I mean, it's a classic example of talking out of both sides of your mouth, right? When they're on the debate stage, the Democrats, they love to tell you how much they support both sides of this war. And then when you get them on the campaign trail, they're pretty one-sided on that, or at least they have to be because of their vocal minority who are pro-terrorist, pro-Hamas, pro whatever. I also noticed too, and both sides do this, and we all have our talking points as parties, but the Democrats, man, he came right back out, and it's like they had a meeting and they said, hey, let's just repeat the same 3 talking points that Kamala had and just stay on that, to where JD kind of endured himself, William, like you were saying, to the crowd. He gave a little bit of his story, said, I'd like to try to convince you. I think that's the way you got to go to pick up independence. Look at all the Trump guys. We're going to vote for them. We're there. The hard Dems, they're going to vote for Kamala. You got to win that 40% in the middle. And that's a good way to do it, I think, politically.
Well, we're seeing tremendous movement in the direction of Trump among independents. We're seeing a lot of movement in our direction from Hispanics and from blacks and from young people. And we have feedback.
Gabe said they lost internet, but it looks like they're back here.
More clean energy.
Yeah,
So
we had
the solution for us is to continue to move forward. That climate change is real. Reducing our impact is absolutely critical. But this is not a false choice. You can do that at the same time you're creating the jobs that we're seeing all across the country. That's exactly what this administration has done. We are seeing us becoming an energy superpower for the future, not just the current. And that's what absolutely makes sense. And then we start thinking about, how do we mitigate these disasters?
Thank you. Senator, I want to give you an opportunity to respond there. The governor mentioned that President Trump has called climate change a hoax. Do you agree?
Well, look, what the president has said is that if the Democrats, in particular Kamala Harris and her leadership, if they really believe that climate change is serious, what they would be doing is more manufacturing and more energy production in the United States of America, and that's not what they're doing. So clearly, Kamala Harris herself doesn't believe her own rhetoric on this. If she did, she would actually agree with Donald Trump's energy policies. Now, something Governor Walz said I think is important to touch upon, because when we talk about clean energy, I think that's a slogan that often the Democrats will use here. And I'm talking, of course, about the Democratic leadership. And the real issue is that if you're spending hundreds of millions or even billions of dollars of American taxpayer money on solar panels that are made in China, number one, you're going to make the economy dirtier. We should be making more of those solar panels here in the United States of America. Yeah. Some of them are, Tim, but a lot of them are being made overseas in China, especially the components that go into those solar panels. So if you really want to make the environment cleaner, you've got to invest in more energy production. We haven't built a nuclear facility, I think, one in the past 40 years. Senator. Natural gas, we got to invest more in it. Kamala Harris has done the opposite. That's raised energy prices and also meant that we're doing
Senator,
worse by the climate.
your time is up. Governor, would you like to respond?
Well, look, we're producing more natural gas than we ever have. There's no moratorium on that. We're producing more oil, but the folks know, and like I said, again, these are not liberal folks. These are not folks that are Green New Deal folks. These are farmers that have been drought one year, massive flooding the next year. They understand that it makes sense. Look, our number one export cannot be topsoil from erosion from these massive storms. We saw it in Minnesota this summer. And thinking about how do we respond to that, we're thinking ahead on this. And what Kamala Harris has been able to do in Minnesota, we're starting to weatherproof some of these things. The infrastructure law that was passed allows us to think about mitigation in the future. How do we make sure that we're protecting by burying our power lines? How do we make sure that we're protecting lakefronts and things that we're seeing more and more of? But to call it a hoax and to take the oil company executives to Mar-a-Lago, say, give me money for my campaign, and I'll let you do whatever you want. We can be smarter about that. And an all above energy policy is exactly what she's doing, creating those jobs right here.
Governor, your time is up. The overwhelming consensus among scientists is that the Earth's climate is warming at an unprecedented rate. Margaret.
Thank you, Nora. We're going to turn now to immigration. The crisis at the U.S.-Mexico border consistently ranks as one of the top.
Indeed, it was.
That was smooth too.
It was so smooth.
So this Saturday, is it this Saturday? Or is it next Saturday? Hang on here. I'm doing a little fact check live here. Not Kamala. It was the
news organization. No, they said that they weren't going to do fact checks.
What are you looking for?
I'm looking for. So I have it on my calendar. Maybe it's on Friday. That maybe it is this Friday. That I'm.
While you're looking for that, I saw William.
Yeah, the Washington Post back in June had an article and it says we've been accidentally cooling the planet. So
yeah,
the most recent posts we're down like 2 degrees from where they thought we were. So they don't even know what the temperature of the planet is.
William, you haven't heard you much. Go ahead. What did you want to add to that? Because I saw you were writing down a bunch of notes and your face went crooked as soon as they said this.
Well, look, I mean, scientific consensus, only works when they censor and mute all the scientists who disagree with them. The IPCC, the main UN body that promulgates all the data and the reports that people use on this, is thoroughly corrupt. It's totally dogmatic. It's not truly scientific in any way. Sea levels are where they've been historically for hundreds of years. The climate isn't warming at any significant rate. And in fact, CO2 is good for the climate, right? Like more heat, more energy, more growth, more production, more babies. So, I mean, it's nonsense. They slipped it in there. It's just absurd.
What would you say?
the world is literally greening because there's more carbon dioxide and there's no warming that can be discerned. You have these heat islands in which they have increasingly reduced our temperature monitoring stations down into in places that are just covered in asphalt. And they completely ignore the temperature data coming from our satellites, which shows that this is all bunk.
I'm still thinking about the thing that led up to the fact check, which was we just saw two guys, and I'm probably more inside of J.D. Vance on most things, but we just saw two guys act like that America owns its own energy companies, or that it should.
I know.
Can we just talk about that for a second? Like, we were talking about two individual companies that were talking about what they want to do to make things more financially affordable for their customers. I think I would be fine with that conversation. What I don't think should be happening is that people who are running to be president of the United States and vice president of the United States are acting like they own private companies.
Well, you're exactly right. And I would add to that just this bit of context, which is that the federal government under this administration has gone to every imaginable length to crack down on our ability to produce energy, starting with the 100. Ending of the Keystone XL pipeline on Biden's day one. They've done everything they can to obstruct permitting of all sorts of drilling, all sorts of positive projects. And as J.D. Vance pointed out, there hasn't been a new nuclear plant in 30 years. So how are you going to power all these electric cars they want you to buy and they want to force you to buy? There is a deliberate effort here to strangle American energy. And American energy is so bloomin' productive that it's outstripping their ability to do that. But give them another 4 years and watch them choke it off and make us a net importer again.
Now, bring this video up. There is so much of this trash happening from the Democratic Party. You guys remember John Kerry, and then what's the other guy who looks like John Kerry, who's the current Green? What's his name? I can't remember his name. He's a current Green czar right now. I think it's John Kerry. It might even be John Kerry.
It's John Kerry.
Bring up. Yeah, John Kerry.
John Kerry does look like John Kerry.
Yeah. There's two John Kerry.
Funny how that works.
He does.
So here's AOC in 2019. You guys will bring that up right now? Because you gave me a thumbs up. I want you to bring it up. Here's AOC in 2019 talking about Miami.
Is not responding to the crisis not responding with a solution on the scale of the crisis. Because what's not realistic is Miami not existing in a few years. That's not realistic. So we need to be realistic about the problem, which we have not been. We have not been realistic about the rate of poverty in the United States.
Global warming.
Majority of Americans, large plurality of Americans, not having $1,000 in savings. That's not realistic. People not being able to afford insulin and dying. That's not realistic.
All right,
that's
there.
not the reality.
She's going on about global warming, and she said in 2019. I have this on my calendar. I said in 5 years, remind everybody that AOC said this in 2019, that Miami is going to be underwater in 5 years.
I'm just mad that you made me listen to AOC, and I still have to get through Tim.
You know what's right? It is not realistic that Miami will cease to exist. That's absurd.
You know what? I'm just saying, what's very realistic is the actuaries that insurance companies use on the coastline of Miami. Go down there and read those. They will fully insure anything on the coastline because when they do their research and they look at their actuaries, there will be no flooding or raising of the ocean. So if it's good enough for a multi-billion-dollar corporation to risk their shareholders, I think we're okay.
Yeah, I think so.
All right, they're about to do immigration. Let's get to it.
That's right.
That's really true.
Uh-oh. Did we lose them again? It doesn't look like they're moving.
Uh-oh.
I think our producers just had a heart attack.
Senator
There we
Vance,
go. There we go. Here we go.
your campaign is pledging to carry out the largest mass deportation plan in American history and to use the U.S. military to do so. Could you be more specific about exactly how this will work? For example, would you deport parents who have entered the U.S. illegally and separate them from any of their children who were born on U.S. soil? You have 2 minutes.
So first of all, Margaret, before we talk about deportations, we have to stop the bleeding. We have a historic immigration crisis because Kamala Harris started and said that she wanted to undo all of Donald Trump's border policies. 94 executive orders suspending deportations, decriminalizing illegal aliens, massively increasing the asylum fraud that exists in our system. That has opened the floodgates. And what it's meant is that a lot of fentanyl is coming into our country. I had a mother who struggled with opioid addiction and has gotten clean. I don't want people who are struggling with addiction to be deprived of their second chance because Kamala Harris let in fentanyl into our communities at record levels. So you've got to stop the bleeding. You've got to re-implement Donald Trump's border policies, build the wall, re-implement deportations. And that gets me to your point, Margaret, about what do we actually do? So we've got 25 million illegal aliens who are here in the country. What do we do with them? I think the first thing that we do is we start with the criminal migrants. About 1 million of those people have committed some form of crime in addition to crossing the border illegally. I think you start with deportations on those folks. And then I think you make it harder for illegal aliens to undercut the wages of American workers. A lot of people will go home if they can't work for less than minimum wage in our own country. And by the way, that'll be really good for our workers who just want to earn a fair wage for doing a good day's work. And the final point, Margaret, is you ask about family separation. Right now in this country, Margaret, we have 320,000 children that the Department of Homeland Security has effectively lost. Some of them have been sex trafficked. Some of them hopefully are at homes with their families. Some of them have been used as drug trafficking mules. The real family separation policy in this country is unfortunately Kamala Harris's wide open southern border. And I'd ask my fellow Americans to remember when she came into office, she said she was going to do this. Real leadership would be saying, you know what, I screwed up. We're going to go back to Donald Trump's border policies. I wish that she would do that. It would be good for all of us.
Governor,
Amen.
do you care to respond to any of those specific allegations, including that the vice president is, quote, letting in fentanyl and using kids as drug mules, among other things regarding children?
The drug mule is not true, but I will say about the fentanyl, because this is a crisis of this, the opioid crisis. And the good news on this is the last 12 months saw the largest decrease in opioid deaths in our nation's history, 30% decrease in Ohio, but there's still more work to do. But let's go back to this on immigration. Kamala Harris was the attorney general of the largest state and a border state in California. She's the only person in this race who prosecuted transnational gangs for human trafficking and drug interventions. But look, we all want to solve this. Most of us want to solve this. And that is the United States Congress. That's the Border Patrol agents. That's the Chamber of Commerce. That's most Americans out here. That's why we had the fairest and the toughest bill on immigration that this nation's seen. It was crafted by a conservative senator from Oklahoma, James Lankford. I know him. He's super conservative, but he's a man of principle, wants to get it done. Democrats and Republicans worked on this piece of legislation. The Border Patrol said, this is what we need in here. These are the experts. And the Chamber of Commerce and the Wall Street Journal said, pass this thing. Kamala Harris helped get there. 1,500 new border agents, detection for drugs, DOJ money to speed up these the adjudications on this, just what America wants. But as soon as I was getting ready to pass and actually tackle this, Donald Trump said no, told them to vote against it because it gives him a campaign issue. It gives him what would Donald Trump talk about if we actually did some of these things? And they need to be done by the legislature. You can't just do this through the executive branch. So look, we have the options to do this. Donald Trump had 4 years. He had 4 years to do this. And he promised you, America, how easy it would be. I'll build you a big, beautiful wall, and Mexico will pay for it. Less than 2% of that wall got built, and Mexico didn't pay a dime. But here we are again, 9 years after he came down that escalator, dehumanizing people and telling them what he was going to do. As far as the deportation plan, at one point, Senator Vance said it was so unworkable to be laughable. So that's where we're at. Pass the bill, she'll sign it.
Governor, your time is up. Senator, the question was, will you separate parents from their children? even if their kids are U.S. citizens? You have 1 minute.
Margaret, my point is that we already have massive child separations thanks to Kamala Harris's open border. And I didn't accuse Kamala Harris of inviting drug mules. I said that she enabled the Mexican drug cartels to operate freely in this country. And we know that they use children as drug mules, and it is a disgrace, and it has to stop. Look, I think what Tim said just doesn't pass the smell test. For 3 years, Kamala Harris went out bragging that she was going to undo Donald Trump's border policy. She did exactly that. We had a record number of illegal crossings. We had a record number of fentanyl coming into our country. And now that she's running for president, or a few months before, she says that somehow she got religion and cared a lot about a piece of legislation. The only thing that she did when she became the vice president, when she became the appointed border czar, was to undo 94 Donald Trump executive actions that opened the border. This problem is leading to massive problems in the United States of America. Parents who can't afford health care, schools that are overwhelmed. It's got to stop, and it will when Donald Trump is president
Senator,
again.
your time is up. Governor, what about our CBS News polling, which does show that a majority of Americans, more than 50%, support mass deportations?
Look, we fix this issue with a bill that is necessary, but the issue on this is what happens when you don't want to solve it. You demonize it. And we saw this. And Senator Vance, and it surprises me on this, talking about and saying, I will create stories to bring attention to this. That vilified a large number of people who were here legally in the community of Springfield. The Republican governor said, it's not true. Don't do it. There's consequences for this. There's consequences. We could come together. Senator Langford did it. We could come together and solve this if we didn't let Donald Trump continue to make it an issue. And the consequences in Springfield were the governor had to send state law enforcement to escort kindergartners to school. I believe Senator Vance wants to solve this, but by standing with Donald Trump and not working together to find a solution, it becomes a talking point. And when it becomes a talking point like this, we dehumanize and villainize other human beings.
Tim,
Governor, your time is up. Senator, I'll give you 1 minute, but let me just ask you the question first. The governor has made the point, and I think as a sitting lawmaker, you know that Congress controls the purse strings and any funding. So you have said repeatedly that Donald Trump would, through executive action, solve this. Do you disagree that Congress controls the purse strings and would need to support many of the changes that you would actually want to implement? You have 1 minute.
Look, Margaret, first of all, the gross majority of what we need to do at the southern border is just empowering law enforcement to do their job. I've been to the southern border more than our borders are. Kamala Harris has been. And it's actually heartbreaking because the Border Patrol agents, they just want to be empowered to do their job. Of course, additional resources would help, but most of this is about the president and the vice president empowering our law enforcement to say, if you try to come across the border illegally, you've got to stay in Mexico, you've got to go back through proper channels. Now, Governor Walz brought up the community of Springfield, and he's very worried about the things that I've said in Springfield. Look, in Springfield, Ohio, and in communities all across this country, you've got schools that are overwhelmed. You've got hospitals that are overwhelmed. You have got housing that is totally unaffordable because we brought in millions of illegal immigrants to compete with Americans for scarce homes. The people that I'm most worried about in Springfield, Ohio, are the American citizens who have had their lives destroyed by Kamala Harris's open border. It is a disgrace, Tim. And I actually think, I agree with you. I think you want to solve this problem, but I don't think that Kamala Harris does.
Senator, your time is up. Governor, you have 1 minute to respond.
It is law enforcement that asked for the bill. They helped craft it. They're the ones that supported it. That's because they know we need to do this. Look, this issue of continuing to bring this up, of not dealing with it, of blaming migrants for everything. On housing, we could talk a little bit about Wall Street speculators buying up housing and making them less affordable, but it becomes a blame. Look, this bill also gives the money necessary to adjudicate. I agree. It should not take 7 years for an asylum claim to be done. This bill gets it done in 90 days. Then you start to make a difference in this, and you start to adhere to what we know, American principles. Look, I don't talk about my faith a lot, But Matthew 25:40 talks about to the least amongst us, you do unto me. I think that's true of most Americans. They simply want order to it. This bill does it. It's funded. It's supported by the people who do it. And it lets us keep our dignity about how we treat other people.
Thank you, Governor. And just to clarify for our viewers, Springfield, Ohio does have a large number of Haitian migrants who have legal status, temporary protected status.
Well, Margaret, but
thank you, Senator. We have so much to get to.
Margaret, I think it's important
We're
because
going to turn out of the economy. Thank
Margaret,
you.
the rules were that you guys weren't going to
we're-
fact check, and since you're fact checking me, I think it's important to say what's actually going on. So there's an application called the CBP One app, where you can go on as an illegal migrant, apply for asylum or apply for parole, and be granted legal status at the wave of a Kamala Harris open border wand. That is not a person coming in, applying for a green card and waiting for 10 years. That is the facilitation of illegal immigration, Margaret, by
Thank you, Senator, for describing the legal process. We have so much to get to, Senator.
Those laws have been on the books since 1990.
Thank you, gentlemen.
The
We
CBP
want to have
One app has not been on the books since 1990. It's something that
Gentlemen, the audience can't hear you because your mics are cut. We have so much we want to get to. Thank you for explaining the legal process. Nora.
Thank you, Margaret. The economy is a
so condescending.
Yeah.
Okay, Greg, I want to start with you, and we got just so much there. What did you latch on to? What was your thoughts?
First of all, this is the second debate where it's, we can't get anything done because of Trump. He keeps squashing this bill. He has so much power. We can't. It's like, well, if a guy that's not even the president can get 100 senators not to vote for something, why are you running, Kamala? Then he should be president if he's got all that power. Second of all, no one ever wants to talk about it. It's a bundling of bills. The reason why Republicans and Democrats didn't vote for it, well, some Democrats, most Republicans, is because they had billions of dollars of aid to Ukraine bundled in with it, and a small amount of that was for the border. And they do this all the time in Congress, where they'll put 4, 5, 6 different issues together, so that way you have to vote for the other 3 bad things to get your one good thing that you like or your constituents want or that you want to put out on YouTube or whatever. So the whole thing is BS, but no one looks into it, and it bugs me to no end. But I digress.
There are 2 enormous lies about that bill, and always have been. The first one is so egregious, it's hard to imagine. The bill legalized millions of illegal aliens to come across the border without apprehension. It gets to the millions before the Border Patrol under that bill was even allowed to apprehend anybody. So what it did was it actually legalized Biden's entire open borders policy, thus changing existing law, which brings me to the second enormous lie about that bill. The idea that that bill is needed to enforce the border is absurd. We have immigration laws in this country. Just enforce them. They are pretending that we don't and that they need a new law. It is a ruse. It is a lie.
William?
Well, look, I think that as we've taken a break here, that the 2 Karen moderators have now asked to speak to J.D. Vance's manager because they're so frustrated at him fact-checking the fact-checkers. But that was an absolute boss move, total Chad move. He had to put them in line, remind them of the rules, fact-check the fact-check. All the data, all the facts is on J.D. Vance's side of this. I do wish that he would have been a little bit more particular about the failure of the Langford-Schumer immigration bill, which would have actually codified up to 5,000 illegal border crossings a day, I think, before they started hitting the limits, before they were enforcing whatever they were going to do. And JD's right. They don't need new legislation. They don't need more money. The executive branch of the United States, the president, has all the authority to direct DHS and ICE and USCIS to put an end to this, to stop playing catch and release with dangerous criminal aliens, convicted violent offenders, sex offenders. So I think he could have gone harder on it, but I'm glad that he put the debate moderators in line.
2 things I want to say real quick, and I want to get back to the debate. One of them is I want all the Republicans that they say that were for it. I want all their names. I just want to make sure that we should do our own fact checking to see if those Republicans really supported how horrible this bill was. The second thing is This is a horrible line of argument from them that Donald Trump, I think Greg hit this so well, is so powerful that he was able, not the president of the United States, but just a citizen at this point, to control the whole of Congress on the Republican side not to do anything. My question to them would be, if you're president of the United States, how are you going to stop him if he can still do that?
Right.
You can't.
Donald Trump's a bully. We can't stop him. And it's like,
so
I don't want the Democrats doing anything.
It's just
That's a great sign for me.
Argument that doesn't really pass.
Don't forget, the person he's running against, Kamala, is the president of the Senate as the vice president.
And you just made me think about this. If Kamala wins, Walz would be the president of the Senate.
Yeah.
All right, let's keep going.
Hit play.
Top concern for voters. Each of your campaigns has released an economic plan. So let's talk about the specifics. Governor Walz, Vice President Harris unveiled a plan that includes billions in tax credits for manufacturing, housing, and a renewed child tax credit. The Wharton School says your proposals will increase the nation's deficit by $1.2 trillion. How would you pay for that without ballooning the deficit? Governor, I'll give you 2 minutes.
Yeah, thank you. And Kamala Harris and I do believe in the middle class because that's where we come from. We both grew up in that. We understand. So those of you out there listening tonight, you're hearing a lot of stuff back and forth, and it's good. It's healthy. That's what this is supposed to happen. You should be listening. How's this going to impact me? The bold forward plan that Kamala Harris put out there is talking about this housing issue. The one thing is there's 3 million new houses proposed under this plan with down payment assistance on the front end to get you in a house. A house is much more than just an asset to be traded somewhere. It's foundational to where you're at. And then making sure that the things you buy every day, whether they be prescription drugs or other things, that there's fairness in that. Look, the $35 insulin is a good thing, but it costs $5 to make insulin. They were charging $800 before this law went into effect. As far as the housing goes, I've seen it in Minnesota. 12% more houses in Minneapolis, prices went down on rent 4%. It's working. And then making sure tax cuts go to the middle class. $6,000 child tax credit, we have one in Minnesota, reduces childhood poverty by 1/3. We save money in the long run, and we do the right thing for families. And then getting businesses off the ground. The law as it stands right now is $5,000 tax credit for small business, increasing that to $50,000. Now, this is a philosophical difference between us. Donald Trump made a promise, and I'll give you this. He kept it. He took folks in Mar-a-Lago, he said, you're rich as hell, I'm going to give you a tax cut. He gave the tax cuts that predominantly went to the top class. What happened there was an $8 trillion increase in the national debt, the largest ever. Now he's proposing a 20% consumption or sales tax on everything we bring in. Everyone agrees, including businesses, it would be destabilizing it, it would increase inflation and potentially lead to a recession. Look, this is simple for you. Where are we going? Kamala Harris has said to do the things she wants to do, we'll just ask the wealthiest to pay their fair share. When you do that, our system works best, more people are participating in it, and folks have the things that they need.
Senator, I want to give you a moment to respond on that. But similarly, the Wharton School has done an analysis of the Trump plan and says it would increase the nation's deficit by.
So Walz economic plan. Notice at least 2 times I counted, if not 3 or 4, he used the word fair or fairness.
Yeah.
Whenever Democrats use that word, it's dog whistle for socialism. That's exactly what it is. Fairness, fair share, all that stuff.
Well, and this is CrossPolitic, so it's important to point out that Scripture requires us to treat the rich and the poor no differently from one another at the governmental level. And so God gives us a standard for this, the tithe. It's a flat tax. And in 1 Samuel 8, he makes plain that government shouldn't take as much as the tithe. So if Tim Walz wants fairness, he needs about a 9% flat tax rate. And anything beyond that, God has declared as tyranny.
Quote that scripture.
There we go, Rod.
Take that and cut it up.
1 Samuel 8.
I'm not even.
Let's go with that.
I just always am wondering, what is their fair share and who's making that number?
Yeah. Well,
who gets to decide what that number is?
And you don't want them defining that anyway.
Yeah, that's what I'm trying to say. Yeah. Anyway, I see William. You're down there either tweeting or you writing down notes. I'm always curious to what you're doing. I'm just nosy.
Well, my tweets are notes, right? Like I get these great thoughts and I tweet them, then I say them in the show.
You're doing both. Go ahead. Add something before we keep going.
Yeah, I mean, look, I mean, the economic question in terms of the Donald Trump tax plan, which that, I mean, it's just complete nonsense. Everybody benefited from Trump's tax and economic policies. I remember being in Washington, D.C., maybe a year into his presidency, and, adamant, conservative, never Trumpers in my circles were like, well, I didn't vote for the guy, but my 401k sure looks great. And that wasn't just for like top earners, right? Those were people with families, gas prices, grocery prices, everything was down. Tax economy, it's clearly obvious. J.D. Vance and Donald Trump are better on this than Kamala Harris. I was at the grocery store the other day. Food Line's like a low-tier grocery store in North Carolina. Gallon of organic milk was $8. $8.
What kind of cow do you got to have to get $8 gallon milk?
It's gold, hallelujah.
That's half a cow. That's half a cow in Michigan.
Well, and just to add to William's point, we actually reached a point under the Trump tax plan where our employers were able to expand their hiring so much that we were actually about 600,000 laborers short in this economy. We actually had a worker shortage in this economy in 2019 because Donald Trump's economic plan had created that much growth. Now, of course, COVID messed that up. But if we'd had the second Donald Trump term that he won, we would be back to where we were in 2019 and bounding forward from there.
All right, let's hear JD's question.
5.8 trillion. My question is the same for you. How do you pay for all that without ballooning the deficit? I'll give you 2 minutes.
Well, first of all, you're going to hear a lot from Tim Walz this evening, and you just heard it in the answer. A lot of what Kamala Harris proposes to do, and some of it, I'll be honest with you, it even sounds pretty good. Here's what you won't hear, is that Kamala Harris has already done it. Because she's been the vice president for 3.5 years. She had the opportunity to enact all of these great policies. And what she's actually done instead is drive the cost of food higher by 25%, drive the cost of housing higher by about 60%, open the American southern border and make middle-class life unaffordable for a large number of Americans. If Kamala Harris has such great plans for how to address middle-class problems, then she ought to do them now, not when asking for a promotion, but in the job the American people gave her 3.5 years ago. And the fact that she isn't tells you a lot about how much you can trust her actual plans. Now, Donald Trump's economic plan is not just a plan, but it's also a record. A lot of those same economists attack Donald Trump's plans, and they have PhDs, but they don't have common sense and they don't have wisdom, because Donald Trump's economic policies delivered the highest take-home pay in a generation in this country, 1.5% inflation, and to boot, peace and security all over the world. So when people say that Donald Trump's economic plan doesn't make sense, I say, look at the record. He delivered rising take-home pay for American workers. Now, Tim admirably admits that they want to undo the Trump tax cuts. But if you look at what was so different about Donald Trump's tax cuts, even from previous Republican tax cut plans, is that a lot of those resources went to giving more take-home pay to middle-class and working-class Americans. It was passed in 2017, and you saw an American economic boom unlike we've seen in a generation in this country. That is a record that I'm proud to run on, and we're going to get back to that common sense wisdom so that you can afford to live the American dream again. I know a lot of you are struggling. I know a lot of you are worried about paying the bills. It's going to stop when Donald Trump brings back common sense to this country.
Governor, do you want to respond to that? What has Kamala Harris done for the middle class?
Yeah, well, Kamala Harris's day one was Donald Trump's failure on COVID that led to the collapse of our economy. We were already before COVID in a manufacturing recession, but 10 million people out of work, largest percentage since the Great Depression. 9 million jobs closed on that. That was day one. Whether it was the Infrastructure Act or other things, we moved. Now, you made a question about experts, said this. I've made a note of this. Economists can't be trusted. Science can't be trusted. National security folks can't be trusted. Look, if you're going to be president, you don't have all the answers. Donald Trump believes he does. My pro tip of the day is this. If you need heart surgery, listen to the people at the Mayo Clinic in Rochester, Minnesota, not Donald Trump. And the same thing goes with this. And I ask you out there, teachers, nurses, truck drivers, whatever, how is it fair that you're paying your taxes every year and Donald Trump hasn't paid any federal tax in the last 15 years and the last year as president? That's what's wrong with the system. There's a way around it, and he's bragged about that. We're just asking for fairness in it, and that's all you want.
You have a minute.
Governor, you say trust the experts. But those same experts for 40 years said that if we shipped our manufacturing base off to China, we'd get cheaper goods. They lied about that. They said if we shipped our industrial base off to other countries, to Mexico and elsewhere, it would make the middle class stronger. They were wrong about that. They were wrong about the idea that if we made America less self-reliant, less productive in our own nation, that it would somehow make us better off, and they were wrong about it. And for the first time in a generation, Donald Trump had the wisdom and the courage to say to that bipartisan consensus, we're not doing it anymore. We're bringing American manufacturing back. We're unleashing American energy. We're going to make more of our own stuff. And this isn't just an economic issue. I mean, I've got 3 beautiful little kids at home, 7, 4, and 2, and I love them very much, and I hope they're in bed right now. But look, so many of the drugs, the pharmaceuticals that we put in the bodies of our children are manufactured by nations that hate us. This has to stop, and we're not going to stop it by listening to experts. We're going to stop it by listening to common sense wisdom, which is what Donald Trump governed on.
Senator, you're talking about Governor Walz. Can you address that? I mean, voters say they trust Donald Trump on the economy more. Why?
Well, if you're listening tonight and you want billionaires to get tax cuts, you heard what the numbers were. Look, I'm a union guy on this. I'm not a guy who wanted to ship things overseas, but I understand that, look, we produce soybeans and corn. We need to have fair trading partners. That's something that we believe in. I think the thing that most concerns me on this is Donald Trump was the guy who created the largest trade deficit in American history with China. So the rhetoric is good. Much of what the senator said right there, I'm in agreement with him on this. I watched it happen too. I watched it to my communities, and we talked about that. But we had people undercutting the right to collectively bargain. We had right to work states made it more difficult. We had companies that were willing to ship it over, and we saw people profit. Folks that are venture capital in some cases, putting money into companies that were overseas. We're in agreement that we bring those home. The issue is Donald Trump is talking about it. Kamala Harris has a record, 250,000 more manufacturing jobs just out of the IRA.
May I respond to that?
Yes.
So appreciate that. So if you notice what Governor Walz just did is he said, first of all, Donald Trump has to listen to the experts. And then when he acknowledged that the experts screwed up, he said, well, Donald Trump didn't do nearly as good of a job as the statistics show that he did. So what Tim Walz is doing, and I honestly, Tim, I think you got a tough job here because you've got to play whack-a-mole. You've got to pretend that Donald Trump didn't deliver rising take-home pay, which of course he did. You've got to pretend that Donald Trump didn't deliver lower inflation, which of course he did. And then you simultaneously got to defend Kamala Harris's atrocious economic record, which has made gas, groceries, and housing unaffordable for American citizens. I was raised by a woman who would sometimes go into medical debt so that she could put food on the table in our household. I know what it's like to not be able to afford the things that you need to afford. We can do so much better. To all of you watching, we can get back to an America that's affordable again. We just got to get back to common sense economic principles.
I hope we have a conversation on healthcare then.
Senator, Governor.
Please.
Thank you. Margaret?
We have a lot to get to ahead, gentlemen, on many topics. But right now, I want to talk about.
I want to bring Dr. Brown into
I just want to say there's 3 women on the stage tonight.
2 women and a soy boy.
I want to bring Dr. Brown in because he's from Ohio, and I want to get your kind of thoughts on this whole debate. J.D. Vance obviously is a senator from Ohio. What's your thoughts?
Like I said, he's a slick politician. I mean, he's good at saying all the right things. He's good at putting forward the right face. He's going to be good in this debate. Heck, he won the primary on that. I don't know a lot of guys, especially military guys, that are thrilled about J.D. Vance and some of the things that he said and some things he's done. And like I said before, he's a chameleon. I mean, he'll change whatever spots, colors he needs to be to get elected and stay in office. So if at any point a good economy is not popular, then he'll change that. So
what did you see J.D. Vance do in Ohio that makes you want to label him a chameleon?
Well, a good thing's a life issue. He was pro-life until he wasn't. He's again, I think even David Bonson even pointed out that on the economy and such, he was one way before he wasn't. He wasn't necessarily, or heck, he wasn't even pro-Trump to start with. He said some pretty disparaging things about him until he was on the short list. I mean, he's just a politician. I mean,
yeah.
Could I jump in here really quick?
Yeah, go ahead.
Just two things really quick. Just to kind of push back a little bit there, Doc. You know, there's 5 years ago when he said those things, I know so many people I've met that hated Trump in the first 2 years or the first term and are now full supporters of Trump just because of what he kind of did in the first 4 years. So I do think there can be a genuine change there. I'm not saying he's not a politician. He's very good. He's very polished. And there is a difference between talking to someone over coffee in your district versus a national television stage during a debate. You are going to talk differently if you are good at being a politician, and we can debate on whether or not we like that or not. Secondly, I would say I hate when people look right at me and lie. I'll tell you, as someone who owns their own business for the last 15 years, and I've filed taxes with my tax accountant every single year under Obama and Trump and now Biden, and having to pay not having any health care insurance and paying $4,200 extra because I didn't carry it, to 2017 sitting down with my tax accountant. He goes, oh, you get a $25,000 tax credit right off the rip. That's what Trump just did. Now let's add on the child tax. Now let's add on all the write-offs. Now let's right. And I'm walking around in 17, 18, and 19 with almost 15% more money in my pocket from taxes on top of the economy doing well, real estate doing well, all those things. You can't look at me like a Tim Walz or a Democrat and go, oh, Trump didn't know what he was doing with the economy. Now, we can make the argument that, that hurts the deficit. They're still spending like crazy. I have issues with that. I'm fiscally conservative. But to have someone look you in the eye like a Walz and go, no, he didn't. They loved it so much they kept the tax cuts. Biden gets in there. He goes, we can't get rid of these tax cuts. People, they're surviving on them at this point. And then also Walz, bragged, well, he's still taking those, he takes all those credits and doesn't pay any taxes. That's what made Trump president. That moment on stage when he said, absolutely, I take those tax cuts and don't pay tax because it's the code. And your friends too would, Hillary. That was the moment he became president 6 months before November.
Yeah.
And there's no one in Congress that will take up that bill. None of them want to change that progressive tax law because they take full advantage of it. So that's just not on the president. That's also on our Congress representatives in both chambers.
Man, great.
I want to get back to the debate. I want to catch up with what's going on.
Sorry.
He needs his own show.
He has his own show.
Oh, yeah. What's it called? Okay.
Personal qualifications. The vice president is often the last voice the president hears before making consequential decisions. We want to ask you about your leadership qualities. Governor Walz, you said you were in Hong Kong during the deadly Tiananmen Square protests in the spring of 1989. But Minnesota Public Radio and other media outlets are reporting that you actually didn't travel to Asia until August of that year. Can you explain that discrepancy?
Yeah, well, and to the folks out there who didn't get at the top of this, look, I grew up in small rural Nebraska, town of 400, town that you rode your bike with your buddies till the streetlights come on, and I'm proud of that service. I joined the National Guard at 17, worked on family farms, and then I used the GI Bill to become a teacher, passionate about it, a young teacher. My first out, I got the opportunity in the summer of '89 to travel to China. 35 years ago, be able to do that. I came back home and then started a program to take young people there. We would take basketball teams, we would take baseball teams, we would take dancers, and we would go back and forth to China. The issue for that was to try and learn. Now, look, my community knows who I am.
We would sniff them and smell them.
Look, I will be the first to tell you, I have poured my heart into my community. I've tried to do the best I can, but I've not been perfect. And I'm a knucklehead at times, but it's always been about that. Those same people elected me to Congress for 12 years. And in Congress, I was one of the most bipartisan people, working on things like farm bills that we got done, working on veterans benefits. And then the people of Minnesota were able to elect me to governor twice. So look, my commitment has been from the beginning to make sure that I'm there for the people, to make sure that I get this right. I will say more than anything, many times I will talk a lot. I will get caught up in the rhetoric. But being there, the impact it made, the difference it made in my life, I learned a lot about China. I hear the critiques of this. I would make the case that Donald Trump should have come on one of those trips with us. I guarantee you he wouldn't be praising Xi Jinping about COVID. And I guarantee you he wouldn't start a trade war that he ends up losing. So this is about trying to understand the world. It's about trying to do the best you can for your community. And then it's putting yourself out there and letting your folks understand what it is. My commitment, whether it be through teaching, which I was good at, or whether it was being a good soldier or was being a good member of Congress, those are the things that I think are the values that people care about.
Governor, just to follow up on that, the question was, can you explain the discrepancy?
All I said on this is I got there that summer and misspoke on this. So I will just, that's what I've said.
Tim Walz, sometimes a knucklehead.
Kind of like he misspoke about his military record.
Yeah. Uh-oh, I think we froze here for a minute. What do you think, William? Is he sometimes a knucklehead?
I mean, it's just amazing. They caught him dead to rights in a lie, and he decides to give his life story, you know, to just sort of like run the clock out on it, right? It's like just trying to hope that the buzzer sounds and it gets him out of this. You know, it's absurd. I mean, the Walz is a chronic liar, right? Like that's what this guy is he is a habitual pathological liar about his track record, about his military record, you know, probably about his sexuality and all sorts of other things too.
Rod, and you've been involved in politics. Is this a misstep to basically say, yeah, I talk a lot, I tell a lot of lies, and I'm a knucklehead? That's essentially what he said.
I think that's their strategy all around. You saw Kamala do it in the last debate again and again. They know that the mainstream media won't fact check them. They know that they will not have any stories written about this outside of the Daily Wire and places like that. So, you know, Breitbart will tear them up on this, but you know, nobody who's voting for them is going to read Breitbart. So they know they have a pass. And this is really the problem we face in a country where honestly, the state controls the media. We haven't completely done away with the First Amendment. We've just de facto done away with it.
That's a good point. And for everyone on the live stream, I think they're trying to jump back on. I think CP's ISP went down again. But I don't know. We're probably about the halfway point. What do you guys think? Who's winning? Who's connecting more with independent voters and their party voters? What do you think, William?
Well, we haven't gotten to the big one yet, which is abortion, you know, and I'm tracking it more in live time. It sounds like there's, you know, some frustration with Vance's answers on that. So I'm very much looking forward to getting to that. Of course, Walz is completely barbaric on the issue. So I think we'll expect to see that. And I hope that Vance manages to take the high ground. But on the China, I'd like to point this out for people and I wish Vance would go in on it. Like Walz's connections to China is very dubious. This is another thing that really gets glazed over by the national media, which is their obsession with Russia, they fail to recognize how much more of a serious and capable threat to American sovereignty, national security, and economic prosperity is China. And Walz has documented, I think, close to 40 trips back and forth to China in his lifetime. And if he is not a Chinese agent, I would be shocked. He certainly learned a lot about China. There's no doubt about that. But I bet China learned a lot about him too.
Right.
Agree.
I just came in the middle of that, and all I heard was you giving it to Walz. That's all I needed to hear. Thank you so very much. I appreciate every little bit of that you said. I don't think Walz is trying to answer that. Did we get the?
Can we get back to the answer with Walz?
He gets us ads. Irk me.
Yes. I'm sorry, guys. We're having we had that death storm. We have not had the most. Did you guys see about the death storm we had the other day? Literally shut us down in the live stream.
Yeah, we had
took us completely out of the internet. Our main studio lost all the power here on mainstream, and obviously we're still doing some of that right now. So
CrossPolitic coming from you live at a rooftop in South Carolina.
With sand in our teeth.
No.
Senator, your time is up. Nora?
Thank you. Now to the issue of reproductive rights. Governor Walz, after Roe versus Wade was overturned, you signed a bill into law that made Minnesota the least restrictive states in the nation when it comes to abortion. Former President Trump said in the last debate that you believe abortion, quote, in the 9th month is absolutely fine. Yes or no? Is that what you support? I'll give you 2 minutes.
That's not what the bill's. Look, this issue is what's on everyone's mind. Donald Trump put this all into motion. He brags about how great it was that he put the judges in and overturned Roe versus 52 years of personal autonomy. And then he tells us, oh, we send it to the states. It's a beautiful thing. Amanda Zaworski would disagree with you on it's a beautiful thing. A young bride in Texas waiting for their child at 18 weeks. She has a complication in the membrane. She needs to go in. The medical care at that point needs to be decided by the doctor. And that would have been an abortion. But in Texas, it put them in legal jeopardy. She went home, got sepsis, nearly dies, and now she may have difficulty having children. Or in Kentucky, Hattie Duvall, a 12-year-old child, raped and impregnated by her stepfather. Those are horrific. Now, when God asked about that, Senator Vance said, 2 wrongs don't make a right. There is no right in this. So Minnesota, what we did was restore Roe versus Wade. We made sure that we put women in charge of their health care. But look, this is not where, if you don't know Amanda or a Hadley, you soon will. Their Project 2025 is going to have a registry of pregnancies. It's going to make it more difficult, not impossible, to get contraception and limit access, if not eliminate access to infertility treatments. For so many of you out there included, infertility treatments are why I have a child. That's nobody else's business. Those things are being proposed. And the call on this is, well, the state decide what's right for Texas might not be right for Washington. That's how this works. This is basic human right. We have seen maternal skyrocket in Texas, outpacing many other countries in the world. This is about healthcare. In Minnesota, we are ranked first in healthcare for a reason. We trust women, we trust doctors.
Senator, do you want to respond to the governor? Will you create a federal pregnancy monitoring agency?
No, certainly we won't. And I want to talk about this issue because I know a lot of Americans care about it, and I know a lot of Americans don't agree with everything that I've ever said on this topic. And, you know, I grew up in a working class family in a neighborhood where I knew a lot of young women who had unplanned pregnancies and decided to terminate those pregnancies because they feel like they didn't have any other options. And, you know, one of them is actually very dear to me. And I know she's watching tonight, and I love you. And she told me something a couple years ago that she felt like if she hadn't had that abortion, that it destroyed her life because she was in an abusive relationship. And I think that what I take from that as a Republican who proudly wants to protect innocent life in this country, who proudly protect the vulnerable, is that my party, we've got to do so much better a job at earning the American people's trust back on this issue where they frankly just don't trust us. And I think that's one of the things that Donald Trump and I are endeavoring to do. I want us as a Republican Party to be pro-family in the full sense of the word. I want us to meet for moms to afford to have babies. I want it to make it easier for young families to afford a home so they can afford a place to raise that family. And I think there's so much that we can do on the public policy front just to give women more options. Now, of course, Donald Trump has been very clear that on the abortion policy specifically, that we have a big country and it's diverse. And California has a different viewpoint on this than Georgia. Georgia has a different viewpoint from Arizona. And the proper way to handle this, as messy as democracy sometimes is to let voters make these decisions, let the individual states make their abortion policy. And I think that's what makes the most sense in a very big, a very diverse, and let's be honest, sometimes a very, very messy and divided country.
Governor, would you like to respond and also answer the question about restrictions?
Yeah, well,
that's a very disappointing answer from JD. And this, we talked a lot about this in the last debate, where Trump, especially when abortion comes up, there's so much opportunity actually to win in that question.
Yes.
So much opportunity. I mean, the easy place JD could have won there was when Walz brought up this stepdaughter was raped by her stepdad. And so he wants to kill the baby instead of giving the death penalty to the stepdad. I mean, that's where you win. It's like, actually, no, the stepdad should die.
Yes.
We don't
death penalty there.
We death penalty for stepdad.
Yeah.
We don't kill the 5-year-old. We don't kill the stepdaughter, and we don't kill the baby.
Yeah.
The dad is who's supposed to die. And you got to turn. Talk about Republicans losing trust to the pro-life community in these kind of answers.
The question is, who is counseling Trump and Vance
Vance. I love that.
JD Vance on these issues. And I would argue, and I think a case could be made, that
Pro-life
just
industry.
like Megan Basham said in Shepherds for Sale,
Yeah.
where you have liberal operatives that are penetrating the church, of course, the same people are penetrating these pro-life lobbies, and they're manipulating this conversation to sort of pull back and pull away. When we had a death blow strike with Roe v. Wade, and then the response from the pro-life community was like, "Oh no, this could actually, it's too far.
Yeah.
Like, what do we do?" And then they go, "Well, we can't go too far. We can't do this. We can't do that. We got to kind of pull back." And it's infuriating to me, because it's corruption. I mean, JD Vance is in Ohio. He's from Ohio, right? So JD Vance in Ohio. I was at the National Right to Life conference in 2016 with Zach Conover with Apologia. We interviewed a bunch of people there, and there was Jim Bopp at the conference, and somebody asked him, and they said, "Hey, what do we do about these heartbeat bill laws that just passed in Atlanta? What do we do if they pass them here in our state?" And Jim Bopp said, "They're too extreme. You're going to lose Republican votes, and you need to go back to your state and tell your senators and congressmen."
You sound like you just blew out your microphone. Oh, you were turned up. Seriously.
Let me take a little bit of a contrarian view here. I actually think that Vance has a point. You guys know where I am on this. I believe in abolition. I actually have been making the case now for 2 decades that the 14th Amendment already abolishes abortion. That's where I'm coming from. Right. But J.D. Vance is taking the position in this last segment that basically we haven't done our job of persuading people. And he's absolutely right. And the votes we're seeing are proving that's true. The fact that, right now it takes 60% to pass Amendment 4 in Florida, and there's a pretty decent chance it's going to pass, which would give us 9-month abortion. We saw that in Ohio, which is a red state. We see a lot of slippage in areas that we really thought were pretty solid. And the fact is, we haven't done a good job of persuading people on life. And look, the pro-life movement as a whole is very much culpable in that, for reasons we could go on for hours about. But at the end of the day, it really is on us. We've got to make the case to people in a way that they can hear. And by the way, just one critique of some of our abolitionist friends. They are not wrong that all of the people involved in deciding to murder a baby should be punished. I completely agree with that. But emphasizing that is probably not the most persuasive way to go. Emphasizing the importance of protecting a baby is more important than emphasizing who gets punished, even though there needs to be punishment in many of these cases.
Thank you. I want to hear their follow-ups. They're going to have some follow-ups on this. So let's.
I'm kind of interested in the rest of the panel, but go ahead.
Okay.
I'm going to go get Marcus a mic so I don't say something that might make me disagree with Rob Martin.
I would just say very quickly, I agree with both of the other panelists. This is pro-life talking points for the last 25 years to soften it and basically say, hey, there'd be less abortions if we just had a better economy and a better, better choices for women. And, I would just say, would you, if you're talking about slavery 160 years ago, would you have that same argument? Well, if we could just create a better economy, maybe less white people would want to own black people. Would you be okay with that argument? I mean, that's what he's saying here. So it really upsets me that Trump and Vance are being counseled by the pro-life agenda movement. I mean, it is a huge conglomerate of just boards and organizations and directors and funds and lobbyists. And it's crazy because I know people that are in it. And it's just very frustrating to hear him talk this way.
And this goes back to my point. Correct. There's such a better way to handle this discussion. And the Republicans should be on the offensive on this issue and not on the defensive.
William,
agreed.
We've always been defensive on this issue.
Yeah. And Rod, I would just quickly ask, how do you say we're not messaging properly, but how do you message properly to a group of people in a country that love to break the 6th commandment, that love to murder, that celebrate murder, And have you always noticed the big political issues are always the ones that concern the 10 Commandments? Stealing and murder and lying and all these things. So I look at it as a much spiritual issue just as much as a political one too.
Oh,
the spirit of murder is alive and well. We love to murder.
I couldn't agree more. Look, fundamentally, we've got an evangelism problem in this country.
Yeah.
We are absolutely. I mean, we will send billions of dollars to reach the world, and I'm glad we do that. But we won't cross the street. We aren't doing just basic outreach efforts like the labor unions do, the Democratic Party does, to reach the neighborhoods around our churches. And it's just a scandal how many unbelievers say in polling that they would go to church if someone just invited them. Well, no one's inviting them. So on a very fundamental level, you're exactly right. We have a spiritual problem. Until these people are regenerate, they're not going to change their ways for the most part. However, we saw during the partial birth abortion debate back in the late 90s and the early 2000s that when you made people confront the reality of what an abortion is, and that really is a baby, that really does feel pain, that really could be born, that really could have a future, that might be a construction worker, but might just as easily be a Mozart or an Elon Musk or whatever. And we shouldn't stifle its opportunity for life. When we made that case on partial birth abortion, we banned partial birth abortion. It took years, but we got it done. And we won a lot of people to the pro-life cause by having that discussion. We've got to have that discussion now about the whole banana. I mean, all of it, from conception to birth. And in Tim Walz's state, after birth, where they are killing babies who have survived an abortion after they're born.
Wolf, go ahead. I want to hear. Then we'll go back.
Yeah, so on the messaging, right, Walz is falling prey to this, but we talk about who's counseling them. It's women, right? So women lead the pro-life movement in America because weak men and weak pastors have abdicated their responsibility to lead on this issue. And so even the more pro-life Vance is couching all of his language on this issue to appeal to the suburban wine mom. And he actually misses a chance there to really ground this morally. Because I think he's right. And I've made this point before about how the people in Appalachia, Ohio, Kentucky, the lower class individuals in this country, they are probably more inclined to be more pro-abortion for economic reasons. Not good. But what he should do there is he should say, we want a country in which you can succeed without ever thinking you have to kill your baby to do it. Why? Because that life is valuable and because you will be better off for it. Like, he needs to actually appeal to the fact that having children is a blessing and it helps you strive, and appeal to the men who are abandoning these women or even, like pushing them into abortions and chastising them. And so like there was sort of the whole of the shell of a possibly good point there on abortion that he actually failed to land because he's being counseled by gynocentric, pro-life talking points that are coming from the women who lead this movement, and they're not morally grounded, they're not forceful, and they're not strong.
Let that man cook. Let that man cook. Let's get back to the debate. Y'all better keep your finger on that trigger.
Donald Trump made the accusation that wasn't true about Minnesota. Well, let me tell you about this idea that there's diverse states. There's a young woman named Amber Thurman. She happened to be in Georgia, a restrictive state. Because of that, she had to travel a long distance to North Carolina to try and get her care. Amber Thurman died in that journey back and forth. The fact of the matter is, how can we as a nation say that your life and your rights, as basic as right to control your own body, is determined on geography? There's a very real chance, had Amber Thurman lived in Minnesota, she would be alive today. That's why the restoration of Roe versus Wade. When you listen to Vice President Harris talk about this subject and you hear me talk about it, you hear talking exactly the same. Donald Trump is trying to figure out how to get political right of this. I agree with a lot of what Senator Vance said about what's happening. His running mate, though, does not, and that's the problem.
Governor, your time is up. Senator, let me ask you about that. He mentioned, was, I think, referring to a national ban. In the past, you have supported a federal ban on abortion after 15 weeks. In fact, you said if someone can't support legislation like that, quote, you are making the United States the most barbaric pro-abortion regime anywhere in the entire world. My question is, why have you changed your position?
Well, Nora, first of all, I never supported a national ban. I did when I was running for Senate in 2022 talk about setting some minimum national standard. For example, we have a partial birth abortion ban in place in at the federal level. I don't think anybody's trying to get rid of that, or at least I hope not, though I know that Democrats have taken a radical pro-abortion stance. But Nora, one of the things that changed is in the state of Ohio had a referendum in 2023, and the people of Ohio voted overwhelmingly, by the way, against my position. I think that what I learned from that is that we've got to do a better job at winning back people's trust. So many young women would love to have families. So many young women also see an unplanned pregnancy as something that's going to destroy their livelihood, destroy their education, destroy their relationships. And we have got to earn people's trust back. And that's why Donald Trump and I are to pursuing pro-family policies, making child care more accessible, making fertility treatments more accessible, because we've got a better job at that. And that's what real leadership is.
Governor, your response.
I'm going to respond on the pro-abortion piece of that. No, we're not. We're pro-women. We're pro-freedom to make your own choice. We know what the implications are to not be that. Women having miscarriages, women not getting the care, physicians feeling like they may be prosecuted for providing that care. And as far as that we're educating our children and giving them options, Minnesota's a state with one of the lowest teen pregnancy rates. We understand that too. We know that the options need to be available. We make that true. We also make it, we're a top 3 state for the best place to raise children. But these two things to try and say that we're pro-children, but we don't like this, or you guys are pro-abortion, that's not the case at all. We are pro-freedoms for women to make their choices. We're going, and Kamala Harris is making the case, to make options for children more affordable, a $6,000 child tax credit, but we're not going to base that on the backs of making someone like Amber Thurman drive 600 miles to try and get health care.
Senator.
May I respond to that? First of all, Governor, I agree with you. Amber Thurman should still be alive, and there are a lot of people who should still be alive, and I certainly wish that she was. And maybe you're free to disagree with me on this and explain this to me, but as I read the Minnesota law that you signed into law, the statute that you signed into law, it says that a doctor who presides over an abortion where the baby survives, the doctor is under no obligation to provide life-saving care to a baby who survived a botched late-term abortion. That is, I think,
That's
whether
not
you're
true.
pro-choice or pro-abortion, that is fundamentally barbaric. And that's why I use that word, Nora, is because some of what we've seen, do you want to force Catholic hospitals to perform abortions against their will? Because Kamala Harris has supported suing Catholic nuns to violate their freedom of conscience. We can be a big and diverse country where we respect people's freedom of conscience and make the country more pro-baby and pro-family. But please.
Yes, Governor, please respond.
Look, this is one where there's always something there. This is a very simple proposition. These are women's decisions to make about their healthcare decisions, and the physicians who know best when they need to do this. Trying to distort the way a law is written to try and make a point, that's not it at all.
What was I wrong about, Governor? Please tell me, what was
that is not the way the law is written. Look, I've given
But how?
I've given this advice on a lot of things, that getting involved, that's been misread, and it was fact-checked at the last debate. But the point on this is there's a continuation of these guys to try and tell women or to get involved. I use this line on this, just mind your own business on this. Things worked best when Roe versus Wade was in place. When we do a restoration of Roe, that works best. That doesn't preclude us from increasing funding for children. It doesn't increase us from making sure that once that child's born, like in Minnesota, they get meals, they get early childhood education, they get health care. So hiding behind all these other things, when you're not proposing them in your budget, Kamala Harris is proposing them. She's proposing all those things to make life easier for families.
I asked a specific question, Governor. You gave me a slogan as a response.
It's not the case. It's not true. That's not what the law says. So they fact-checked it with President Trump.
That is,
Gentlemen, there's a lot to discuss. We have to move on. And
We got
right
it.
back with much more of the
I'm
CBS
sorry, we
News
can't fact check that.
presidential debate in just
There's a couple things going on. Again, here's where the Republicans are getting really bad on this whole abortion issue. Their logic, their arguments has just gotten so bad these last couple of years. He needs to turn this on Walz. What do you mean pro-women? You're pro-trans? You're pro up to birth abortion?
What is a woman?
What is a woman? Like, do the logic. I mean, you should pin the Democratic Party as the most illogical party right here on this point too. Like, what is a woman? What do you mean? You guys will emasculate men. You'll cut off their junk. What do you mean pro-women? You kill babies. Your own governor of Virginia was saying you would wrap up a baby and swaddle it, and the mom and dad can make a decision. The mom and the doctor can make a decision.
Well,
the other thing is you should pin the Democratic Party as pro-insanity, pro-illogic, and then lastly, COVID. You guys are not pro-choice. You guys just want to tell people what to do. You wanted everyone to get vaccinated. You wanted to use OSHA to require all employees to vaccinate.
I think I would have said, Governor, like you, I don't always talk about my faith, but when I do, I like to use Matthew 2. And when it talks about to the least of these, I like to consider the baby in the womb.
That's right, Knox.
Hey,
That's right, Knox.
That's what I would have done.
That's right.
And I would have just let that sit there and let him choke on that.
Yeah.
Because he's going to bring up the Bible and talk about as you've done to the least of these. What's more least than the baby in the womb, my friend?
That's right.
But because the Republican Party is starting to get apologetic about being pro-life. We're starting to form arguments that are kind of like trying to ignore the fact that we actually do want to get rid of baby murder.
Yeah.
We're avoiding that. Go ahead.
What's crazy really quick too is you got to realize Walz is making a philosophical argument and then Vance is trying to counter with a political argument. And if they're going to take a philosophical stance, we win that argument. On abortion, we win it constitutionally, philosophically, religiously, logically, scientifically. We win it on every front. So if he's going to start talking about freedom and liberty and personal autonomy, then we have to start talking about philosophically, what is it? It is murder. So then if you want to legalize murder, that's what the discussion we have to have. And if that's the discussion we're having, then we have to start visiting the books on all sorts of laws of things in the society that we want and don't want. So Vance will never win this when he's making a political argument, which you're right, Gabe. That's what the Republican Party is doing now. They're softening their stance, apologizing for having this harsh tone. Well, no, if he gets to use freedom and liberty and have a philosophical argument, we do too. It's murder and it's the least of these. Like Knox said, that's what he should be talking about.
I see you over there shaking your head, William.
Well, yeah, I mean, I made the point earlier, but just in brief, this entire conversation is longhoused, right? It is made and executed under the progressive gaze and under the female gaze in particular. And Vance is great, but man, he's clearly not fully out of the longhouse on this one yet. And it's interesting to sort of see that, the loss of just even standard, better pro-life Inc. talking points on that's not the woman's body. You're actually killing the baby. Vance has seemed kind of lost these standard points that we've been using for many years on this. And I do wonder, as I'm trying to analyze this, because we're clearly in a pickle with the Republican Party. It's a mess. I'm not trying to downplay it. Why has it gotten so bad? And I think it's because, man, they're just losing. We overturn Roe, then we get wiped across at the state level. Every pro-life ballot referendum we've lost. Every pro-abortion ballot referendum they've won. And I do wonder if it's sort of the Trump campaign. They're like, we're not even listening to you guys anymore. We won't even use your standing talking points anymore because you're losers, right? And it's really unfortunate, but that might be what's going on here. It's discouraging. It's frustrating. And frankly, this is Vance's weakest part so far.
Well, that's right. But let me add one detail that's worth remembering. The pro-life movement went to Donald Trump and said, we want Roe overturned. He said, okay. If you'll recall, back in March, maybe April of 2016, Trump had come so thoroughly to a pro-life conclusion that he actually said that we should punish mothers who seek an abortion.
Yeah, I remember that.
The pro-life movement freaked out at him. And by the way, my friend Ted Cruz among them, because he was, neck and neck fighting for the nomination. Everybody went at Trump, and Trump listened. Trump listened to the pro-life leadership. Said, oh, that's not the approach. Okay, you just want Roe overturned. I can do that. And he did. So he actually thinks, I believe, I truly believe, one, he is pro-life. And two, he is executing on what the pro-life leadership told him to do. That is the great failure here, and it can be corrected for 28, but I don't think we're going to see better this year.
Rod, that was so well said. That's exactly what has happened because pro-life didn't have anything planned after overturning Roe v. Wade. You're exactly right.
Well said. It would ever be overturned. They had no plan at all.
Wow, we are in bad shape. All right, let's see where we are in the debate. I think they went to a break, but let's see where we are because I want to get back to this. I was going to say something. Are you guys are finding this spot? Go ahead and turn the volume down. Could you guys turn the volume down while you're trying? Yeah, there you go. So they're going to get us back to the debate. I just want to say this real quick because everybody keeps talking about the story of the young lady who went out of the state to go get the abortion. She comes back, and notice the emotional game that they're playing here.
They're manipulating
and I just want everybody to try and reframe the story for a second because it seems like we get it better when it's framed in a better context for us. You have a guy who is a slave master who is going to go and sell another person and buy another person in another state. He goes to that state, and as he's on his way there, he slips and falls and he dies. You don't have the same sort of compassion for him, do you?
Thank you.
We have a person who is going to murder another person, and because they didn't do it well, it actually took them out in the same time frame, right? And in the process of going to kill another person, they killed themselves. Now, this is a horrible situation because we shouldn't be killing each other.
Right, that's right.
Right.
That's the real situation that's going on there. And that's not the political talk because everybody wants to have all this, act like they want to have all this compassion. It doesn't play well on stage. I get it, but that's the real situation what happened to that young lady. It's if she wasn't trying to kill her baby, she wouldn't be dead.
That's right.
Right.
And nobody wants to say that, but that's just the plain facts, people.
Well, that's what we say. It's like murder and things like murder and rape and all these evil things. They are the God's law. The role of God's law is so that those things happen in the back alleys and that they don't happen in public and out front and become legal and
where
become
we justify
mainstream.
them.
That's exactly right. It's so abortion should be dangerous. They should be dangerous.
It is.
Insanely
All killing is
dangerous.
dangerous.
That's right. All killing is dangerous.
Somebody's dying.
Right.
Do we have our spot? Let's catch up back with the debate.
This news, vice presidential debate. We want to turn now to America's gun violence epidemic. The leading cause of death for children and teens in America is by firearms. Senator Vance, you oppose most gun legislation that Democrats claim would curb gun violence. You oppose red flag gun laws and legislation to ban certain semi-automatic rifles, including AR-15. So let me ask you, earlier this year, for the first time, the parents of a school shooter were convicted of involuntary manslaughter, sentenced to 10 years in prison. Do you think holding parents responsible could curb mass shootings? I'll give you 2 minutes.
Yeah, well, Nora, on that particular case, I don't know the full details, but I certainly trust local law enforcement and local authorities to make those decisions. I think in some cases the answer is going to be yes, and in some cases the answer is going to be no. And the details really matter here. For example, if a kid steals a gun, that's going to be different than if a parent hands over a gun knowing that the kid is potentially dangerous. But look, I just sort of speak as a father of 3 beautiful kids, and our oldest is now in 2nd grade. And a lot of parents, we send our kids to school with such hope and such joy and such pride at their little faces on the first day of school. And we know, unfortunately, that a lot of kids are going to experience this terrible gun violence. And of course, our hearts go out to the family affected by this terrible stuff, and we do better. I think that Governor Walz and I actually probably agree that we need to do better on this. The question is just how do we actually do it? Now, here's something that really bothers me and worries me about this epidemic of violence. The gross majority, close to 90%, in some of the statistics I've seen, of the gun violence in this country is committed with illegally obtained firearms. And while we're on that topic, we know, thanks to Kamala Harris's open border, we've seen a massive influx in the number of illegal guns run by the Mexican drug cartels. So that number, the amount of illegal guns in our country is higher today than it was 3.5 years ago. But what do we do about the schools? What do we do to protect our kids? And I think the answer is, and I say this not loving the answer, because I don't want my kids to go to school in a school that feels safe or where there are visible signs of security. But I unfortunately think that we have to increase security in our schools. We have to make the doors lock better. We have to make the doors stronger. We've got to make the windows stronger. And of course, we've got to increase school resource officers, because the idea that we can magically wave and take guns out of the hands of bad guys, it just doesn't fit with recent experience. So we've got to make our schools safer. And I think we've got some common sense bipartisan solutions for how to do that.
Governor, you have 2 minutes.
Well, I think all the parents watching tonight, this is your biggest here. Look, I got a 17-year-old, and and he witnessed a shooting at a community center playing volleyball. Those things don't leave you. As a member of Congress, I sat in my house surrounded by dozens of the Sandy Hook parents, looking at my 7-year-old picture on the wall. Their 7-year-old were dead. They were asking us to do something. And look, is there, but our first responsibility is to our kids to figure this out. In Minnesota, we've enacted enhanced red flag laws, enhanced background check, and we can start to get data. But here's the problem. If we really want to solve this, we've got folks that allow research to be even done on gun violence. And this idea that we should just live with it, here's what I do think, that is a good start to the conversation. I 100% believe Senator Vance hates it. It's a bullet in your heart. I agree with that. But that's not far enough. We know there are things that work. I spent time in Finland and seen some Finnish schools.
Debate here.
They don't this
so they
happen,
can
even though they high ownership in the country.
Stop the debate. So the debate's choppy experience for everybody. When we're talking, it's not a choppy experience.
Yeah, I think that's probably the last part. We can try and reset and restart you guys over there on that side, see if we can get a better connection. And we can talk through kind of the rest of at least this last part of the conversation. I at least like to know what our panel.
Let's just finish with the panel.
Stuff. And if you can get a fresh restart on that. Okay, go ahead.
What do you mean? Go ahead.
Guys, so the last thing that they were talking about was gun violence in America. And, nobody really seems to have a good answer. It's like either take away all your guns or that's actually the other side. They just want to take away all your guns. Oh, look at this. What, Greg, I guess you're going to go first since you have the biggest gun on the screen. I'm guessing
this is a beautiful 12-gauge semi-automatic bullpup. Okay, I think everyone should have one, especially if you need to get through a doorway. You can fire off about 30 rounds in about 10 seconds. So, come talk to me. I'll tell you where to get one. But I couldn't hear too much of it. It was getting choppy. But there's a very simple answer here. There is a price for your freedom and your liberties when it comes to the Second Amendment. Unfortunately, there will be deaths if people own guns, but those deaths are part of protecting a God-given right and freedom. And no one wants to say that because it sounds harsh and cruel, and it sounds like you aren't loving towards those who might have passed away from that.
Well, I would say this, though. There will be deaths if you don't own guns.
I'm going to say
the only people in that situation who will own guns are the government and the criminals. The criminals are going to keep coming with their guns, 100% certain of that, especially when we have an open border and any number of weapons can come from literally anywhere in the world. We're hearing reports of surface-to-air missiles coming across the Mexican border now. So there's no chance that the criminals will be deprived of their firearms. And the government in the 20th century was the leading killer of people, period, bar none. The communist regimes alone killed 100 million people. Pol Pot murdered a third of the population of Cambodia in less than 3 years. My gosh. Hitler kills 10 million, not counting the war, just people he executed. So the last thing in the world you want is for the government to be the monopoly on that sort of force. The Second Amendment is what keeps us free. We wouldn't have any other freedoms were it not for the Second Amendment. And the guys who gave it to us had just overthrown their government. They knew what they were doing.
Amen.
William?
Well, yeah, Rod's absolutely right. The Second Amendment is what grounds the rest of the Bill of Rights. You lose it, you lose everything else. But I did want to point this out in terms of how this entire debate is unfolding so far, is that the framing of every single subject matter that they've moved on to throughout it has all been favorable to the left. Reproductive rights, climate change crisis, epidemic of gun violence. I mean, so it just, again, it shows you the media is completely captured. One of the things that doesn't get brought up in these conversations, and it would have been, I think, awesome if Vance would have said it or maybe gets to it, is how the vast majority of school shooters these days are part of the LGBT perversion. right?
Yeah.
I want to stop calling them LGBT community. They're part of the LGBT perversion project. They're either trans or they're homosexual, and almost all of them are also on SSRIs, right? So it's like the gun violence epidemic, which that's not the right way to phrase it, right? What's really happening is we have young individuals who are being brainwashed, led astray, and drugged up, and then released on society in the public schools. And none of that has to do with the Second Amendment.
Again, it's like the Democrats are the party of no logic. They say if you make abortion illegal, deaths will go up. And then they say if you make guns illegal, it'll fix the death problem. It'll fix the death rate problem. So you make abortion illegal, back alley abortions will go up. If you make guns illegal, then that'll fix the school shooting problem and all that stuff.
That's right. Yeah.
But we also all know that like there's maybe no mass gun shootings in London, but there's mass kniving attacks in London. There's mass machete attacks in London.
Mass murderers are going to find a way to murder.
Yeah.
That's just what they do.
Let's also not forget that about 6 or 7 years ago, they changed the definition for crime statistics to mass shooting only needs to include 2 deaths. So if there's a husband and a wife and one shoots the other, death, suicide, that is now considered a mass shooting. It goes in that category. So the liberals can say, oh, look at all these mass shootings that we're having.
Yes.
Yeah, that actually backfires on liberals, because under that definition, Chicago is is ground zero for all of the mass shootings in America on a weekly basis. And I'm not going to Kanye. I'm not going to say it, but the liberals really don't want to dive into the demographic statistics of who's committing the most gun violence in America, because they are not going to like that answer.
Guys, I got to ask, I want to talk. There's a lot to talk about with the gun violence stuff, because part of it that the conversation I don't hear people having is guns were around and more prevalent when I was younger. I still remember people riding in the back of their vehicles and locking their guns in the back of their vehicles. Yeah. I remember my dad talking about, guns at school when he was going on. People had them in the back of their trucks. And
there's a gun rack built and designed for your truck.
Yeah, right. For the back window. That's so true.
That's right.
Right. And so you have to ask, what kind of people have we been making over the last 3 or 4 generations that have led to where we want to come to each other's public environments and gun each other down? Like, what kind of moral capital do we have in our society? Not the fact that, if we get rid of guns, we develop a higher moral caliber in society. That doesn't work that way.
No, that's completely absurd. And Knox, you're exactly right. I wrote about this after the Jonesboro shooting in 97. I was in the governor's office at that time, and this was horrific. And then a year later, we had Columbine, and the issue here is just staggering when you consider that schools routinely had gun clubs in the 50s and 60s. Shooting sports were common. So it's not, even when I was in high school, kids brought their guns in their trucks and stuff. It's not a big deal. How did this happen? It goes back to what I was saying earlier on the life issue. Fundamentally, we've got an evangelism problem. We are letting this country become very post-Christian. And, we talk about negative world. We're very much there. I don't know how anybody can deny that, although we have friends who do. But beyond that, we've just lost any sense of Christian consensus on morality. And we're actively teaching the young a very, very clear religious point of view, in which they can control their own reality by, lopping off their genitals or changing their hormones. They actually can become the creator. And that's not a neutral judgment. That is a religious point of view that it comes right in line with the Marxism that these guys are seeking to impose on us. You see it at the end of 1984 when we get down to the point at which Winston is being broken, and he's finally told 2 + 2 equals whatever the party says it equals. Mm-hmm. And that's what all of this is about. All of this postmodern gibberish is about breaking down any concept of logic, any concept of Christian morality, any concept of absolutes or law in favor of the arbitrary rule of men.
Yeah, I would just say too, Knox, you say, what kind of, moral landscape have we created when you have a godless, depraved people and culture? Not only can they not recognize justice, but they deeply start to have resentment towards true justice. That's why they always have to talk about fairness, because they hate justice deep down inside when you're depraved and you're godless. And all a gun is a tool for justice. So they have to turn their anger to the tool that can administer justice, because they hate justice, and the godless don't want justice. They want fairness. And they're turning their anger towards something that I believe a weapon, a well-trained set of hands, a man that knows how to protect, is a common grace of God that can, in instances, administer godly justice.
Yes. And of course, the people manipulating these people, the people in power, the elites like Tim Walz, are absolutely understanding what they're doing. These people may be wanting fairness, they may be wanting whatever. The elites are wanting power. And if you disarm the people, then government gets to dictate right and wrong. And that is the ultimate religion they're seeking to establish. It is a deification of the state.
I think that's true. William, you might want to add on to this too, but I'll start with you. I kind of want to know overall, from what we were able to at least watch with the debate before we got too choppy to watch, I thought that Vance, just as a character, his personality, whatever you want to say about him, I felt like he won the day as far as someone who looks like, after Trump, we can possibly have another 8 years. We were talking about earlier whether or not he's manipulable or not, and whether or not he leans one way or the other. I'm more concerned about how are we going to be that moves him into the right direction. Right? I'm more concerned about our standard and how we're. I think Trump was a person who we could move to, especially as Christians. We've seen him move a lot in our direction, and I didn't expect that happening at all during his presidency. So how do you think he fared overall, especially communicating to somewhat of the middle of that gooey middle of America that probably isn't conservative? Do you think he won any more votes for Trump?
I think quite possibly. I think that J.D. Vance is a major upgrade. Indulge, if you will, this hypothetical. If they had not stolen the election in 2020, then there would have never been January 6th, and Pence would not have done what he did, and we would be finishing the second Trump term right now, and it would be Pence at the top of the ticket for the future of the GOP. And I'll unapologetically say that Vance is a major upgrade over Michael Pence when it comes to the future of the GOP in America. So maybe we had to go through 4 years of a wilderness wandering under the Biden, Harris, Walz nonsense in order to get this GOP upgrade. I'm not saying it necessarily was worth it, but it's certainly what you could call a silver lining. JD just gave one of the best debate performances that I've seen from a GOP politician in my lifetime, outside of Donald Trump, particularly in some of those early debates in the GOP primaries in 2016. He's articulate, he's confident, he understands what's going on. He's not going to be backed down or bullied by the moderators or by Tim Walz. You're right. I think that there's issues that I'd love to see Vance grow on. And look, maybe in the future, when Trump has sort of handed the party off to Vance, there will be some more wiggle room on this. We know that Vance is a late life Catholic convert. That means that pro-life issues are going to be very important to him going forward. And I'll also say this to all of but if only we had DeSantis bros out there. And look, I love DeSantis. He's doing a great job in the state of Florida. He's leading it. He's crushing it there. But after this, I'd say when it comes to 2028, Vance is in the prime pole position, and DeSantis is going to have to battle him out for it.
Well, I want to agree with all of that, even though I am very much for Ron DeSantis. But J.D. Vance could be a really great backup, not least because the longer he goes along in his Catholicism, and hopefully he becomes a Baptist or a Presbyterian, but nevertheless, whatever, life is going to become more important to him. And I want to say one thing in his defense here. He was stronger on abortion before he went on this ticket. And the truth is, there's a reason that I haven't had a boss in decades. And it's very simple. I don't want anybody to tell me what to do.
Yeah.
I tell my staff what to do. We have standards here. We actually sign the Baptist Faith and Message every year. at our company. We are very, very serious about what we believe here. J.D. Vance at this moment is more or less working for Donald Trump. He's taking the company line. I don't think that's where he'll be in 4 years. I still think Ron DeSantis is going to be better, but like William said, they're going to have to duke it out.
Well, and here's how the Republicans need to be thinking strategically, because one of the reasons why Vance is talking this way is, one, his boss is Trump. But the other reason why Trump is talking this way is because this isn't the primaries.
That's right.
They don't have to win the pro-life movement over. The pro-life is stuck. If there's anybody that we're going to vote for, we're going to lean to, Trump and Vance. That's all we got. So in the primaries, next year in the primaries, you insist that every legislator you vote for is an abolitionist.
Completely agree.
You insist every legislator you vote for wants to end abortion tomorrow. So we got to push hard next primary to make Vance and Trump squirm in their pro-life policies. That's how
that means we can't waste time in third parties. We can't waste time sitting around complaining. Right. We frequently will have 24% turnout in the primaries, and then we complain that the rhinos run the table. No, it's on us. If the church would turn out, we could run every state primary in the United States without exception. We could own the Republican Party. It would not be hard.
That's right.
Greg, your last word.
Sir. I'm a little conflicted here because I saw David French tell me to vote for Kamala, and he's just such a well-respected figure in my life. I don't know what to do, but I have to agree with both Rod and William. I mean, they said it so well. We have to realize too, and I don't want to sound jaded or political, but you have to win first too. Okay. So that's one thing. You're talking to mostly independent voters, soft Republicans, soft Dems. That's who you're trying to win if you're J.D. Vance. That's who you're trying to win if you're Walz. So you have to win, first of all. So you're going to say things a little bit differently now than you would even 6 months ago. Two, I said it on the last live stream. I take comfort in Trump being a populist. I kind of like the fact that, guess what? If 15 million evangelicals or Presbyterians or Baptists or whatever get upset and have his ear and go, hey, you can't vote that way in Florida, or hey, that's not right, he will listen because he's a populist. He and even Proverbs talks about kings. It's good for kings to listen to their people and the needs and wants of their people. Now we're a constitutional republic. I'm all that. Please don't mishear me. I'm saying I think that can actually be an upside. I think William was exactly right as well too, that he's on the ticket. You got to win first. But what he did tonight in this debate made me like him even more. I was okay with him before. Now I go, okay, I feel a little bit better. The abortion issue, he's got to come around on, get a little stronger on, and he will in time, I think. But overall, I think he rounds out the rough edges of Trump. For those who don't like those rough edges, Trump can still be Trump. For the guys like me who like him to, call liberals idiots and things like that, I don't mind that. I think it's a well-rounded ticket now. And I think the American people and the independents saw that and went, yeah, this JD guy isn't this weird character that for 2 weeks the Dems tried to turn him into. In fact, Walz came off a little bit fumbly, nervous, weird. And then when he's calling him whatever he called himself, I'm a little bit of a goofball. I lie. Right. I don't know. It just was not a good look for him. I would give it to JD. You can call me biased if you want, but just from what we saw, I think he performed better.
Marcus.
Yeah. I think, with Kamala, you have zero chance of getting a Christian to have her ear as president. Yep. But with Trump, you open up the possibility of actual abolitionists, actual Christians, actual reformed people.
Hey, time out. Russell Moore is a Christian.
Actual
and Trump don't like Russell Moore.
Yeah, I hear that Ray Ortland is the top pick for the faith-based advisor of the Kamala Walz White House now. So
But I know people who served in high-ranking advisory roles to the President Trump in 2016 through 20, and they are solid. Some of them are CREC Christians, but they like that's what I'm saying. These are like real people that truly believe that Christ is king that will have Trump's ear, and that's not going to happen under a Kamala administration. You're not going to have a Christian within within 5 miles of the White House, and
let me add to that. Look, I was around the Bush administration, and we were pretty happy back in the day because they were paying attention to us. You know, they really were, and Bush was a real pro-lifer. He wasn't perfect, but he was really trying, and his judicial appointments were good, and he appointed some good people. Okay. And then Trump comes in, and it was like daylight and dark, you know, and all of a sudden you realized, you know, the Bush people were kind of holding us at arm's length all the time compared to Donald Trump. Donald Trump had Tony Perkins running around the West Wing every week. I mean, it was just ridiculous how much access leading Christians had. And it wasn't the Russell Moores. It was the serious believers who actually believe the things that most of us on here believe, and we're doing something about it. And it wasn't just access, it was also appointments. My gosh, he appointed William Wolf. What more can you say? And
I know.
You know, just slews and oodles of good people in every department. And yeah, you can point at a lot of bad nominations. My gosh, Rex Tillerson, for that matter, Barr, you know, we've got just a huge number of bad ones, no question about that. But that was the price we paid for picking an outsider. He didn't know the Washington crowd. He didn't know how that all worked.
And when he did, we fired him.
He was good about firing people. Yeah.
Right.
Well, also listen, that was his dry run though too. First term was dry run. He had some bad people around him that helped advise him erroneously. I think if Trump wins again, you'll see different people and a different type of person. That's just my personal opinion.
Okay, William? There's two things I want to say. The first one you don't have to respond to. You probably will though. If you ever go Russell Moore, I'm going to find you and break both your legs. I want you to know that right now. It's a promise. Okay, so that's the first thing. And the second one is, if Trump gets elected again, are you going back? Is there a way for you to be back inside of the?
Yeah, I mean, that's a good question, right? You know, like our lovely abolitionist friends are, you know, just every day calling me like a bootlicker, psychophant, like fanboy, whatever. It's like, I just want Trump to win, guys. Like, I think it'd be better for our country if we don't have Harris Walz in the White House. So I'm going to talk about that.
The communists, yes.
You know, right. So, but you know, I just moved to North Carolina. I just bought a house. I, you know, moved back here to be near my parents who are older and are not in great health. You know, my mom's in a wheelchair. She has MS. She's had it my whole life. My dad is in his 70s. And he's got a lot of issues going on with his legs. So this is the joke. They only had 2 good legs to start with, and now they're down to like 1.5. And so, you know, I feel like I want to be around. So I really don't know. I've not had any conversations about that. You know, if I'll just say like my interest would probably be more in the latter half of the administration if Trump gets in, you know, and there'll be a lot of churn and burn in that first half. But, you know, I think it's certainly a possibility. You know, I was there at state and DOD in the first time. I had my clearance. It's sitting on a shelf right now. I think it's 5 years before it gets expired. So yeah, we'll see. I certainly want to do whatever I can to help, but also what we're doing at Center for Baptist Leadership is so important. I mean, just all this underscores we cannot lose the Southern Baptist Convention. You know, Megan's book, Ray Ortland endorsing Kamala. You know, it's like there's so much work to be done. And you know what I'd really like to see, and I'll wrap it up with this. I would love to see Southern Baptists be like, if there is a Trump administration, as opposed to being like, you know, counter signalers like they were under Russell Moore, you know, and like throwing sand in the gears of his pro-immigration policies and things like that. I'd actually like to see them helping put wind in the sails of the Trump agenda. And that's something that can probably be done more effectively on the outside.
You know, I think the Republican strategy, their debate strategy, their messaging strategy, or whatever they're doing against the Democrats is just off. You know, you should easily be able to cast the Democratic Party as the party of insanity, the party that thinks men can be women.
Yeah.
You know, That's not hard. The party that wants after birth abortion.
I get you, Gabe, but you got to remember the people they're talking to have mainly been educated by that group. So it sounds they have an uphill battle and trying to communicate when they haven't controlled the education.
But the appeal of Trump and Vance is the masculine way in which they speak.
Yes.
And your authenticity and that directness. So anytime, whether it's Trump or Vance, you immediately see that sort of, hey, they're not being authentic anymore. It's way more obvious and way more disruptive, I think, because people are like, wait a minute, that's not the guy that, like, where are they getting those talking points from?
So we didn't get to hear the closing remarks because of the internet, but this is all JD had to say to win. He's like, ask the American, look into the camera, look directly in the camera, ask the American people, do you want Trump's 4 years in office or Kamala's last 3 years in office? That's it.
Yeah,
that's it. Yeah, that's it. That's a no-brainer.
Yeah,
it's a no-brainer. Gentlemen, I want to thank you for joining us. I always enjoy talking. I would have talked to you guys for 2 hours, even if it wasn't a debate, because I enjoyed talking to you guys. And I'm grateful that you guys gave us your time tonight. Everybody, go follow these men. I tell you guys all the time, the great man. Rod has Substack. William, do you write a Substack as well? Because I don't have it. If you do. Okay. But you're on X, though.
I got a Substack.
Yeah, Marcus Pittman does.
I do. It's doing pretty well too. Yeah, it's called the name is not. It's called Poorly Written Thoughts on Media and Technology.
you break good marketing.
But Dead Man Walking, you can find them inside the Fight Laugh Feast, the pub app. Listen to, Greg, you do a great show.
Hey, buy them Fight Laugh Feast tickets too. Come on, I want to come see you down in October. Let's do it. There's people chattering in the chat. They said, "Man, this chat makes me want to go to Fight Laugh Feast." I said, "Get that ticket, boy."
Yeah, that's our old producer who's out there trying to stoke the flames, and I'm so grateful that he's doing it. You gotta have. I don't mind having plans. I'll tell you when we got one. And if it works, come on to the conference. All right.
Hey, Knox, can I say one more thing?
Yeah, go ahead, man.
All right. So for everybody listening to this, so this isn't for this crew, but maybe it is. This election is going to be close. There's been recent polling, that was done by Lifeway showing, a high support number for Kamala from evangelicals. I think their poll was weighted, not great. It was weighted with Black evangelicals who are going to be more Kamala. It is what it is. But the reality is when it comes down to the swing states that are going to decide this election, Pennsylvania, Michigan, Wisconsin, etc., North Carolina, like we're talking tens of thousands, like your vote matters. So if you're listening to this, you need to make sure that the people are registered to vote. They know when they need to register to vote. They know when their polling location is, and that you are doing everything you can in your personal life to get low propensity voters out to the polls. Evangelicals are terrible at turning out, and that's what's going to matter. So we can chop it up and have fun and, analyze these debates. But if you actually want Trump and Vance to win, get to the polls and help other people get there too.
But if they own a copy of any Russell Moore or David Platt book, tell them that the election is the week after.
And do not die before the election, otherwise you'll be voting Democrat. All right.
That's right.
Hey, Dr. Brown, thank you for being a club member and joining us on the show for a little bit.
All right. Hey, if you're single, get married. If you're married, have you some kids. And if you have kids, go baptize them. Until tomorrow, love God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength. Love your neighbor as yourself. Go fight, laugh, and feast. Thank all 1,500 of you guys who were joining us tonight on the live stream. Appreciate you. Salute. This is CrossPolitic.
Wanted. Young men to rebuild Western civilization. Must be unafraid of pain, blisters, intellectual rigor, and a lifetime of long shifts with swords and shovels, digging ditches, repelling invaders, and reading stacks of books taller than their fathers. Must be impervious to manipulative women of all sorts, giggling virgins, cyber skanks, and even full cauldrons of Karens or hand-wringing clergy, but always seeking to hear and heed the words of Lady Wisdom. Immune to the leadership of hypocrites and LARPing online masculinitods, unaffected by abusive authorities, petty professors, and all brokers of official respectability. Willing to hoist the Jolly Roger and Johnny Cash's favorite finger whenever faced with idolatry. long-suffering joy and determination required. Must be willing to dwell among the tombs and graves of the long dead, seeking truths that cannot die. Exhaustion guaranteed. Conflict guaranteed. Mortality guaranteed. New St. Andrews College. Liberal arts for the undaunted.